Well, welcome back to Spa, just minutes before the start of the Belgium Grand Prix. These are the live pictures from this sensational circuit and a fairly good crowd, although it's not known as to be one of the most populated Grand Prix, this one, John.
No, but it is a race that attracts the people that used to love the, say, Nürburgring, for example. But look at Berila's car. He's got a water jar attached to his chest. I can't imagine that this race is a particularly physical race, but obviously Berila preferring to have something in the car and obviously very close to him that he can drink when he feels the need to. One of the problems of drinking in a car is, of course, with the G-forces, you get a lot of siphoning. The water tends to run into your mouth in the middle of a corner, and that's very disconcerting. You tend to get a big mouthful of water at the very wrong time. But
and a close-up of the tyres, John, and the general word is that virtually the whole grid, certainly all the Goodyear runners, are going on the B compound tyre. That's the harder tyre, presumably hoping to go the full distance, some of them.
Yes, I would think so. With the cooler temperatures we've seen on Saturday and now today, I think most people have tried to run or will try to run on the harder compound in the hope that they don't have to make a pit stop. But as we all have seen throughout the season, all those hopes and plans often get dashed because it's in these early laps where the car is at its heaviest that the car often gets most abused. The need to move around and not drive in the most ideal manner very often leads to tyres getting overheated, and getting out that heat into the tyre surface very quickly is the worst possible thing you can do to a race tyre.
So they're about to head off on the warm-up lap, and there you can see the front row of the grid, all Marlboro McLaren and Ayrton Senna on pole position. Alongside him, Gerhard Berger, then Alan Prost, Boutsen, Terry Boutsen going that little bit extra hard, of course, in his own Grand Prix. Then it's Mansell, Nannini, Patrese, Piquet, Alessi, Nakajima, Suzuki, Capelli, Modena. But there's other stories too, and that, of course, the warm-up times, very crucial in a Grand Prix, and sometimes a much better indicator of what might be the actual form.
This morning, as I mentioned earlier, Alan Prost really was by far and away the quickest. But up until the last lap of that session in the morning, it was Nannini who was quickest, and Nannini was a man I mentioned yesterday as I felt could be a very strong contender indeed. And you've seen in the last two Grand Prix at Hockenheim, the German Grand Prix, and in Budapest, the Hungarian Grand Prix, Nannini was capable of winning either of those two races. And yesterday Nannini did the qualifying session, one set of qualifying tyres, one set of B race tyres, and he did really what McLaren did 2 races ago at Hockenheim. McLaren spent that session, the entire Saturday afternoon session, running their car in a race configuration, in other words, with full of fuel, and really benefited them because they won the race. Now maybe Nannini is going to take advantage of that little bit of information that McLaren, or that sort of strategy that McLaren I think showed. He spent a lot of his time running in full tanks yesterday afternoon, and it really did show up this morning. He was running consistently quickest until that very last lap when Prost drew a 55.290 out of the bag.
And John, the one thing that you do notice up at the back of the circuit there particularly is the item that could change more than any strategic planning that has gone before, and that is the weather, because there is still definitely a doubt about the weather here at Spa. It's been absolutely gorgeous, scorching 2 days of qualifying up to now, but certainly we had thunderstorms last night, and anything can happen here in the Ardennes.
Yes, we're just getting some information through now about teams, and Lotus are one team that really are planning on making a pit stop. Warwick and Donnelly are both intending to come in at some point and change from one set of tyres, the tyres they're going to start on, and then continue on a fresh set of tyres. On the Pirelli side, we've got the hard compound on most of the teams, the medium compound on the Dallara, though we've got a problem with Emanuele Pirro. A few minutes before all this started to take off, Pirro sprinted out of his car up to the pits. A problem with his race car. That race car was pushed off the dummy grid, and I think Pirro has not been able to take his place on the grid. Probably the spare car was not either prepared for him because Pirro is taller than De Cesaris, and also to fit the car with the race tyres and all the bits and pieces that are necessary to enable a driver to start the race in that spare car. It appears that Pirro will not be on the grid, but he may be able to make a start from the pit lane, but only after the grid has formed, the start has been taken, and the cars have gone through the La Source hairpin. Once the last car has passed the exit of the pits, then Pirro will be able to start the Grand Prix, but a very disappointing start for him. And then on a personal note with Emanuele Pirro, he last night announced his engagement to his girlfriend Maria Elena. She was the lady that we had starring in our Hungary feature. So on a personal note, Emanuele Pirro and Maria Elena, congratulations.
Congratulations indeed. And Olivier Gruard was another man who had a little bit of a problem just before the start there. He sprinted back into the pits, but he seems to have got that all sorted out. And he's starting the Grand Prix, no problem there. So here they come into the bus stop. This is the nickname given to the chicane that was introduced a number of years ago to slow them down over the start-finish line, but indeed it didn't slow down one of the Benettons too much yesterday when Nelson Piquet had one of the biggest recent accidents of his career. It really had a big one as he came out of here in qualifying.
It's a very nasty little part of the circuit. It really pays. I think more haste, less speed is the best way to describe this. But those curbs, if you do try and shortcut the chicane, you can gain a little bit of time, but you pay the penalty, as Piquet did when he got it wrong and he got over the curbs. The car spun, and of course the car then spun into the piece of the Armco barrier that segments the racetrack from the pit lane. And really, I have to say, having seen that for many years, the accident that happened, that we all have dreaded happening, happened with Piquet, but for him, he was extremely fortunate because there was a large amount of rubber tyres in front of that segmenting barrier, so there was very little damage indeed.
44 laps lie ahead of this 4.3 mile circuit, that very daunting circuit indeed, a total of 189 miles, very high speed miles indeed. And of course, let me just remind you, on the front row of the grid, it's Senna, Berger, and then it's Prost, Boutsen, Mansell, Nannini, Patrese. We'll be ready to go any second now. Watch the lights when they change to green. The Belgium Grand Prix is on. Senna's made a beautiful start. And
yes,
there's somebody on the grass on the outside there.
Yes, it was one of the Benettons, I think, Nannini. But look, Lazy locking up brakes, going. Lotus Donnelly's off into the back of Warwick. Carnage, Nigel Mansell's out. My God, what an awful start to the Belgian Grand Prix. This is what we feared most. One car going into the old pit lane, a Benetton following it. I suspect that is Nannini's car. Looks like Larini on the left and his Ligier. So let's have a look again and see. But Jean Lazy coming down the... No, it doesn't. Lazy was actually on his brakes later. It was Mansell. Mansell either was pushed from behind or locked a brake. Lazy was the one who had to take avoiding action, but on the left-hand side of the track, both the Lotuses were involved. Donnelly ran into the back of Derek Warwick. In the meantime, Ayrton Senna leads, Berger second, Prost third, and Boutsen fourth. But Edred de Chesros' car stopped at the exit of La Source. I don't know whether they're going to red flag this, but they've got a lot of cars in a position that really need to be taken out of the way. We have to wait and see whether those flags will come out, or if the marshals were able to. And there's Satoru Nakajima. That's at the Raidillon. That's on the part of the circuit just after Eau Rouge, I think. Stefano Modena also up at the part of the circuit Les Combes. So about 7 or 8 cars already in the first lap. Yes, the red flag is out. The race has stopped. It will now, the cars will proceed back to the pits. They will be required to do so at little more than a walking pace, and we will have a restart to this Grand Prix. What an amazing start to the 1990 Belgian Grand Prix. Something we anticipated, but not to the extent we've just witnessed. This was unbelievable.
Well, we've had a number of bumps on that course corner before. Indeed, there's quite a bit of controversy about that start. It used to, of course, be down the hill. The people we definitely know have been involved are Nakajima, Modena, Donnelly, Warwick, Mansell.
And here they're pushing Mansell's car back away from the barrier. Of course, Mansell will be able to get back to the pits, get into the spare car, assuming that he chooses to do that. This car, we can't. Well, there is damage around the front, around the nose of the car. I suspect the right front suspension is damaged. That is a marshal sitting in the car. Mansell is already out of that car. He will be going to his pits. He will be fitted up into the spare car, and he will be able to retake the start from the position that he started the Grand Prix, the original Grand Prix, a few minutes ago.
And they're turning back, number 8, Stefano Modena, and he certainly should have possibly some damage somewhere, because it was, the back end looked a bit strange, but it seems to be rolling okay there. There's one of the Ligiers.
That's Larini's car. Of course, Elio was not able to start the race. So let's look again and see if we can see what's happening. A lot of action on the left-hand part of the track. Nigel Mansell on the inside. Can we see whether she's locked a car? Nannini pulling across the front of Mansell. Mansell suddenly getting sideways. Whether he was touched by Piquet or not. Alesi squeezing through, but on the all the damage at the back. Warwick is getting clipped by Donnelly. Donnelly's right front wheel is well and truly bent, so Donnelly will have to take the start. Again, Larini coming through, and somehow Larini gets tipped, whether it's by Barilla or by Grilla in the Osella, but all sorts of mayhem taking place at the back of the grid. That's a Tyrrell. Yeah. We're not quite sure which part of the circuit it is. It's number 3, Nakajima's car.
Yeah. There could have been debris damage there too, because Larini seemed to get through cleanly, but the debris damage might have caused his problem.
But that, I think, is in a different part of the circuit. I think that is the outcome of the incident with Modena. I think Modena and Nakajima have had a separate little incident somewhere else in the circuit. We believe it's up at the Les Combes, which is the corner, the sequence of corners at the end of that long straight, but we're not quite clear yet.
Okay, Mike.
And they're now, of course, there's a long resettling period to see if these cars could be repaired, replaced. And here's the start once again. And let's see, Senna gets the clean start, but it's behind. There are almost two separate accidents. The inset shows the start in slow motion and unfortunately blocks a little bit of our view. You can see the Benetton in the problem there, John.
Yes, that was Piquet went out right out to the left. But now it's this it looks like Piquet locked a brake, got very sideways. I think he tipped the back of Mansell. Then a lazy squeezes through, one of the Lula Lamborghinis getting through, and then Nakajima clipping a Lula, the two Lotuses.
And John, while you were looking at that bit, I was looking at the back bit, and Martin Donnelly was a long way on the grass, long before that sort of traffic block developed, so there definitely was some bumping and boring at the last bit.
Well, here we are back live. This is Nakajima's Tyrrell. And that car, they're going to try and get that back to the pits. Of course, Tyrrell have got a spare car, but that car is capable of starting. I'm sure they will prefer to do that. But I don't see any driver around. Whether Nakajima's leapt on a motorcycle and been driven back to the pits and that, this car may be, in fact, oiked up onto the back of a transporter and brought back that way. I don't imagine that anybody will want to. One of these marshals drive it back.
John, that little marshal's having the moment of his life. He'll tell all his friends about that one.
Yes, but he's not going to get to drive it back, which really would have made his day. But that was an amazing start. I mean, just a destructive start to the 1990 Belgian Grand Prix. It really just illustrates the difficulty of starting 26 cars. And of course, the grid here at Spa isn't in a straight line. It's only the front 4 or 5 rows that are actually in a straight line. Now there we're looking at the back of one of the Lamborghini Lulas. That's the right rear wheel. That's been clipped by somebody. The tire has got deflated and he's probably done a lap, the best part of a lap on a flat tire. Here is Modena. This is coming up to Les Combes. This is the corner we saw him where he had a spin. Oh, he's on his way back now. His right rear tire well and truly deflated. The car left rear tire, the car grinding on its skid blocks all the way back, and he's got a long way to go to get back to the pits, Ellen.
And the news is that it's a complete restart. Refueling will be allowed, spare cars will be allowed, and Donnelly, for one, is one that's going to be leaping into the spare car. Now, there's number 25.
That's Larini's car. And they have one of the Benettons. We believe that's Nannini. We can't quite see the number on it, but we think it was Nannini that was the one that got involved in that situation on the exit of the corner.
And it could be quite a while till they clear up this mess. We will be running, I presume, the full 44 laps again because it happened so soon. But indeed, it puts into big questions this start here at Spa, the position of the start, because it's far from the first incident we've seen. And we hear that it's going to be about 15 minutes before the restart of the race. So we will take the opportunity to give you a break now here on Eurosport, and then we will be back with the very latest news on the situation here at the Belgium Grand Prix, which has been stopped due to a first corner accident. Join us again shortly on Eurosport.
Die Fahrbahn hinausgefahren sind, eben ihren Startplatz einzunehmen, müssen dann beim zweiten Start aus der Boxen gerade starten. Die Boxenausfahrt ist zunächst einmal geschlossen. Piquet muss sich also sehr beeilt haben, rechtzeitig in seinen Ersatzwagen zu steigen. Der Wagen der Rennleitung geht noch einmal auf die Strecke. Das sind die Fahrer, die jetzt mit ihren Ersatzautos den zweiten Start aufnehmen. Vorne Nelson Piquet mit dem Benetton Ford und dahinter Nicolas Larini mit dem Ligier. Larini, einziger Ligier-Fahrer heute, Teamkollege Philippe Alliot, nicht qualifiziert, Freitag sogar disqualifiziert worden, weil er einen Unfall hatte, einen Dreher, bei dem der Heckflügel beschädigt wurde. Beim Nachmessen haben die Sportkommissare gesehen, dass der Heckflügel um 3 mm zu hoch ist. Rechts im Bild Ron Dennis, der Teamchef von McLaren, ziemlich gestresst nach den langen, ermüdenden und kräfteraubenden Diskussionen mit Ayrton Senna über den neuen Vertrag. Die Gefahr, dass Senna zu einem anderen Team abwandern könnte, war sehr groß. Senna selber sagt, er war sehr, sehr nahe dran, woanders zu unterschreiben, und woanders ist vor allem Williams gewesen, denn durch die Prost-Vertragsverlängerung bei Ferrari.
Well, welcome back to Spa, and you are not watching Nelson Piquet or indeed Nigel Mansell leading the Belgium Grand Prix. You're watching them going around the circuit in their spare cars to take up a position on the grid, because if you weren't with us earlier, you have probably just missed one of the most sensational starts in recent Grand Prix history, when we had a major accident at La Source, the hairpin that immediately follows the start, and Mansell and indeed Piquet, we now think, were one of quite a number of drivers that were involved in that. And that's the sort of carnage that ensued.
Yes, that looks like Aguri Suzuki's little Lamborghini. He was one of the many cars involved in that initial first corner shunt at La Source. So we're still clearing away the debris. And of course, there's still a red flag on the circuit. You can see just how hazy it is. This is one of the problems at Spa right now. And Thierry Boutsen a few minutes ago was complaining that when the red lights went to green, he dropped the clutch, but his car just stood still, and it's as if there's almost a film of moisture on the track surface. And that could have also contributed to the problem we saw at La Source. People can easily misjudge braking if you've got a slightly greasy track surface, and that is just the fact that very, very fine mist that's hanging in the air. Look down, you can barely see all the way down that straight. So possibly the moisture and that mist had a contribution to what we saw as being the most spectacular start to any Grand Prix of 1990.
Well, we definitely know that at least 8 cars were involved in some sort of incident on the first lap that was run. They are Larini, Nakajima, who you see here now in a spare car going round, Modena, Donnelly, Warwick, Mansell, Piquet, Suzuki. Warwick may not have been badly damaged, as Donnelly, I believe, is taking the spare car.
And we think that maybe Piquet was involved in that shunt. We weren't able to identify the Benettons very clearly, but Piquet is in the spare car. But looking at Lotus, they had 2 cars damaged. Donnelly's car undoubtedly was the most damaged of the 2. But whether Donnelly or Warwick get the spare car, I don't know. We don't know how much damage Warwick's car had. We've just seen Warwick, or we're now looking at Warwick coming down the straight. Whether he has been able to get his race car readied and repaired in time, or whether he is in the spare car, at this point we're not clear. But certainly Martin Donnelly's Lotus will not take part. That car had severe damage to the right front suspension.
And we should, of course, point out that there were absolutely no driver injuries involved in any of this. It's a fairly slow-speed place, La Source, and those front suspensions went all askew. There was nobody hurt.
This is going to throw into sort of controversy the whole purpose of having the start on this side of the track. Where the Formula One pits are positioned is not the position that the pits that are used at Spa for all other events. Normally those pits are on the downhill run into the Eau Rouge, but that was for some reason not considered suitable for Formula One, so new Formula One pits were built just before the last source hairpin. But it's always been a problem, and it's always in the Grand Prix that we see the problem where people are accelerating up to the corner, then the front cars have to slow right down. It's a first gear hairpin bend, little more than 30 miles an hour. But unfortunately, when you get 26 cars all charging at one time, the people at the back do get caught out because they're accelerating when the guys in front are starting to lift off and brake.
Well, indeed, very bad news for people in Ireland, because Martin Donnelly will not be starting the Grand Prix. It's Derek Warwick, as we suspected, in the spare car, and Donnelly will not be starting.
Well, that's a great shame for Martin. He really did need to compete here in Belgium, obviously, but just for his own sake, to get into the Grand Prix, to try and get into the points and really salvage something from a season which I'm sure for him has not been as fulfilling as they promised maybe at the beginning of the season indicated it would be. But Derek Warwick has taken over the spare car, and he will be the sole Lotus representative in this year's Grand Prix here in Belgium.
So Derek Warwick had a reasonably good practice session. He qualified, in fact, 18th, and Martin Donnelly qualified 22nd. So really, Warwick has had the upper hand all weekend. He was 20th in the warm-up, and he is now treading his way through the cars. You can see they've all got the electric little blankets on their tires to warm up the tires. But there's now another very major equation coming into this whole thing, because as we wait here, the weather seems to be closing in a little bit again. And if we get rain on top of all this, John, it really is an afternoon of incidents. Mansell definitely confirmed in the T car. so he will be taking up his position on the third row of the grid. Just let us remind you very quickly, front row will be Senna, Berger, Prost, Boutsen, Mansell in the spare car, Nannini, Patrese, Piquet in a spare car, Alessi, Nakajima in a spare car, Suzuki we think probably in a spare car, then Capelli, Modena, he certainly had damage, we don't know the details on that, Gujamin, Bernard, Martini, Pirot, and Derek Warwick definitely in the spare car.
Stop talking in 10. Keep quiet, Alan. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Oui, tout à fait, Christian Longchamp. Comment avez-vous vu l'accident de votre voiture? Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé en fait?
Well, they put the grid back together at Spa in Belgium, and rest assured we'll be back in good time for the resumption there. Some more motorsports action now at the beginning of the programme on the two-wheel meeting from Brno in Czechoslovakia with the big 500cc Grand Prix to come. We'll pick up the action from the 125cc's with 15 of the 17 laps completed. Julian Ryder and Keith Ewan. Thank you, Julian Ryder and Keith Ewan. We'll be back with you, of course, for the 250cc and the main event from Brno in Czechoslovakia. The 500cc still to come as well. But we're back to Spa now in Belgium for what we hope will be the resumption of the Formula 1 Grand Prix. Alan Tyndall and John Watson, live pictures from Belgium.
From two wheels in Brno in Czechoslovakia, we're back to four wheels here in Spa. Well, almost four wheels. Sadly not for either Suzuki or Donnelly, who look like to be non-starting this second attempt to start the 11th round of the World Championship, the Belgium Grand Prix. And the update is that following that first corner accident on the first attempt, both Larini, Mansell, Nakajima, Warwick and Piquet are all in the spare cars.
Yes, and really we've had a chance to look again at that start line, Chantal. We think we have to point the finger of guilt at Nelson Piquet, because we believe it was he who tipped the rear wheel of Nigel Mansell's car. That threw Mansell into the barrier, and then what happened after that really was the consequence of those two cars coming together, and Piquet of course has had to get into the spare car. So really a shambolic start. And I saw a few minutes ago also Ron Dennis, the boss of McLaren, having a word with Roland Brunsenegger, who's the starter of the race, and Ron didn't look particularly happy. The conversation, I think, was one that was very much one way.
Right, and sadly no race for Suzuki or Donnelly. Indeed, they tried to get the repaired Donnelly's car, or possibly the repaired Warwick's car, onto the grid for Donnelly, but weren't allowed. So Warwick is in the spare car, so we'll only have one Lotus in this Grand Prix. There's Terry Boutsen. He managed to avoid all that carnage at the first corner. But they're all, of course, now on their parade lap, their second parade lap of the weekend, and heading down towards a second start. And let's hope, John, that this time it'll be a little bit more orderly.
Well, of course, there's no guarantees in any form of motor racing. We won't have a repeat, but I think the lesson learned is that the track surface, and with the moisture, and really we are getting now more and more closed in, that's almost beginning to be like a fog, but you can almost go out and cut a slice. The moisture is that heavy. And on the track surface, you get that very fine film of scum on the track surface. The track will be slippery. I hope they've all learnt the lesson from the first start, and I hope that they all try and get through, and do get through that source hairpin cleanly. And let's have a decent and clean Belgian Grand Prix.
But if you recall, John, I think the last time an incident like this happened was possibly 1987. Certainly the last time the Austrian Grand Prix was ever run, and I think we had 3 attempts at a start there.
Indeed we had, and that was, possibly the most shambolic start to any Grand Prix in modern times. And it is something that's very difficult to avoid, because in spite of having one shunt, you would think that everybody would be that much more cautious. But when that red light goes to green and you see a gap, you want to go for it. You're not thinking about being cautious. You want to take advantage of somebody's poor start. And of course, that's the situation that leads to further shunts. The difference in Austria was that the pit lane and the part of the track adjacent to the pit lane is very, very narrow indeed. So you were having the start actually coming into a bottleneck within 20 yards of the start. So it was always a particularly bad place. And if some drivers did get out of line, some had a poor start and others had a good start, it was always the recipe for disaster. We saw it 2-3 years ago now. And of course, we've just witnessed a similar situation coming into La Source Hairpin, where the front cars are slowing down, but the people at the back are still accelerating hard. And if there is a little bit of a mischief, let's say, in the middle of a grid, well, then there's going to be the knock-on effect, and we did see that very conclusively.
Well, we certainly had mischief and we certainly had a lot of damage. And we're now certainly going to have 44 laps because the situation is it's a complete rerun. The cars have been refueled. Many people, as we've already said, are in the spare cars. So ahead of them, hopefully this time, lie 189 miles of this fabulous Spa circuit, which at the moment is getting its old reputation back because the weather is definitely a bit threatening here after a super fine 2 days of qualifying. Once again, that old Ardennes rain seems to be rolling into the distance. Let's hope it stays away because, of course, everybody is on slicks and everybody's on B compound tyres. We're ready to go any second now. The light will come on red, then to green, and then La Source hairpin. This time, can they get round clean? It's Senna, Berger. Berger makes a bad start. Senna's got a clear.
What an awful start from Berger. He pulled right across the front of Alan Prost. Boutsen took second place, Berger third, Nannini fourth, the two Ferraris fifth and sixth. But look, almost the same situation. David Brabham had to pull right over to the left to avoid getting involved, but the two Ferraris, Prost and Mansell, side by side, coming down the hill, and we think it's Prost has got through first. But in the meantime, Senna's steaming away, Boutsen second, and Berger after that atrocious start, and what was even worse, the way he pulled across the front of Prost.
Well, a little bit more caution shown at the back of the field that time. Though Berger making an attempt down the inside. Boutsen cuts off the nose. Quite okay there, but certainly didn't give him any passport to go through.
Not at all, and that had an awful ominous signs of Hungaroring only 2 weeks ago when Berger collided with Nigel Mansell. And Berger very keen indeed to make up for that poor start to get past Boutsen. It does appear his Honda engine's a bit quicker down the straight than Boutsen's Renault engine, but there's the man, Nannini, who's in fourth spot, and he managed to get away cleanly and took advantage really of the poor start Berger had to get ahead of Prost, and now Nigel Mansell also, who's running behind Prost.
And look at Senna disappearing away into the Ardennes mist at the moment. He's had an enormous advantage there out in the back part of the course. There's Boutsen in second place, Berger in third, Nannini in fourth place.
Yes, Senna's just pulling away really over a second of a lead at this point already, and I think that Boutsen running in second spot is going to be the man that Senna's going to rely on to give him this enormous advantage even before we get to the end of the first lap of the Grand Prix. Senna's just pulling away every corner, pulling away inches and inches. Berger running in third spot, not really getting close to Boutsen in this part of the track, but Nannini is closing up to Gerhard Berger, then Prost and then Mansell.
And there they come through the bus stop for the first time. And there you see the two Ferraris behind the Benetton. And Senna with almost a half of that pit length straight advantage. Boutsen second, Berger third, Nannini fourth. There you see Prost, there's Mansell, there's Piquet. And then we have Patrese and then Alessi.
And Senna pulled out a 2.2 second lead over Thierry Boutsen in the first lap. Truly remarkable. And Senna now is going to capitalise as best he knows on the fact that he's got a man in second place who he knows is capable of stemming, let's say, the attack from Berger and from Nannini and the two Ferraris. So Senna capitalising to the maximum on that lead.
Berger not close enough at Lecombe that time to do anything about it. Just the positions after ninth place Alessi were Capelli, Bernard, Modena, Caffey, Nakajima, Gujamin, Warwick, De Cesaris, Martini, Griard and Larini in 20th place.
And looks like a big, yes, Paolo Barilla has gone off in a fairly substantial way. The front of his car badly damaged, the right front wheel. Barilla's out of the car, he's on injured of course, and there Andrea De Cesaris, who must have been the other, let's say, involved in that incident too. Italian drivers, one in the Dallara, one in the Minardi, both out of the race, and a red flag yet again. The race has been stopped for the second time. Well, what can you say? This is unbelievable. I don't know why they've decided to do it. Hold the red flag out, stop the race for the second time. Both those cars appear to be sufficiently out of the way off the racing line. I've no idea why. Well, there probably is the reason. That's the back of Barilla's car. You can see the two rear wheels are not attached to the racing car. That they're attached to the gearbox. Whatever that incident was, Barilla's Minardi has detached the back of the car from the chassis. The gearbox has been broken away from the engine, so the stewards, the marshals of the meeting have decided to once again put the red flags out, bring the cars back to the pit lane, and yet here we see it. Yes, De Cesaris and Barilla. Now this is Martini, so there's three cars involved, or there are either two separate accidents. because that's Piero Martini who's involved with De Cesaris. Wherever Barilla got his accident from, we don't know.
And it looked like an overshooting mistake at the end of the long straight there, the Kemmel Straight, where they're doing about 195 miles an hour when they reach that point. So it's difficult to tell if there were 3 or 2 cars, but certainly a lot of damage.
Well, there were certainly 3 cars involved in what may be 2 incidents or just 1 incident. But the cars, of course, had completed 1 flying lap. And there's the back of Barilla's car, and you can see that has been a major shunt. Barilla got out of the car, he's quite unharmed, but that car is going to be taken back on the back of a truck, and I would imagine what's left, it will be thrown into the bin. Certainly the whole rear of the car is ripped away from the engine and the rest of the chassis. We're just trying to determine which part of the track that is. We can't see quite so clearly from that helicopter shot, but it looks to me to be one of the very quick parts of the circuit, and for the amount of damage that's on the back of Barilla's car, I would imagine this is the section of circuit that is on the return back up towards the Blanchimont corners, and that would be the reason why there's such a lot of damage to Barilla. There's 3 corners written off in that car, plus the gearbox being ripped literally from the back of it. There will be, of course, lots of fluid on the track, oil possibly from the gearbox, water radiators.
John, I think it's radio. I think it's at the top of the hill there, because I don't think he would have got that far around that lap.
It could well be. I think, Alan, it may well be, and that is always one of the most difficult parts of the circuit as you come through the Eau Rouge, and then the car gets into a big compression as it climbs up the hill, and then at the top of the hill it gets very light. You can't quite see where the road goes, and that is the Radion section. It is a part of the circuit that really is totally blind, and is blind at 170 miles an hour. And I think you're right, that looks like the Radion part of the racetrack, but the race has been stopped. The marshals are out cleaning up the circuit. There is oil and water on that circuit. Now Andrea De Cesaris and his Dallara, he's got a flat tyre. Whether one or both rear tyres are flat, we can't quite see, but De Cesaris is going to have a lot of difficulty to get that car back to the pits. He's going to certainly have a go at it, but the back end of the car really is dragging itself on the ground.
And so hard are they set, these cars, that very often you see the front wheel popping up off the ground when you've got a puncture like that.
Yes, that's the right rear. That's where he and Pierluigi Martini tagged. So the only damage that De Cesaris appears to have to his car is a deflating right rear tyre. But Pirro, of course, is in the spare car. He was on the grid, but he was then pushed off the grid, so he had a problem. So whether Dallara now have got any cars left that are fit to start the Belgian Grand Prix Part 3 1990, I don't know.
Absolutely, and whether Martini will have any cars. But the news is that it is a complete restart yet again. So for the 3rd time, we will be attempting to run 44 laps of this Spa-Francorchamps circuit.
You know, one of the problems that's going to arise out of here, we see it, Martini losing it, coming down the inside, passing De Cesaris, loses it, spins, collects De Cesaris. Now, for once, poor Andrea is innocent of all blame. Normally he is the victim, or he's the one that creates the problems, but this time Andrea got clipped. It was the left front wheel that drove into the right rear of De Cesaris. That's what caused De Cesaris a puncture. Martini's car looks relatively undamaged, but here we're back now with Barilla's totally written off, and Nardi Ford. Paolo Barilla completely unhurt. He stepped out of the car, went and sat down and sort of looked at what he got out of, really. I mean, when you have a shunt like this, you don't often realize just the extent of the damage. I once had a shunt 9 years ago at Monza. Pretty big shunt it was too, Alan. And when I got out of the car, I shut my eyes, put my head down. When I opened my eyes and got out of the car, I couldn't believe the amount of damage. I thought there was another car had been involved in the accident with me. So these cars are designed in part to be frangible, and that means that a certain amount of loading, a part of the car will break away, and that helps reduce the impact that the driver suffers. So it is not unusual, and it is actually part of the design of the car to have bits come off in a severe shunt. It helps cushion the driver against the impact.
Well, if you've just joined us here on Eurosport, let me tell you that at Spa-Francorchamps, we haven't had a lot of racing, but we certainly have had a lot of incident here this afternoon. Just to very quickly recap, the first start resulted in an accident on the first corner of the La Source hairpin, which really knocked out Larini, Nakajima, Modena, Donnelly, Warwick, Mansell and Piquet. They were all involved in incidents on the first lap, certainly of that first start. We're now looking at a replay of an accident or a series series of accidents that have caused the stoppage of the second start. And they involve Martini and De Cesaris. It's the end of the Kemmel Straight. The cars were breaking down from about 195 miles an hour. It was Martini in the minority that had the spin, and as John says, for once poor old Andrea De Cesaris is an innocent victim. Well, that's something new in his long career.
Yes, Andrea's never been guilty of being innocent on many occasions, but in this one he was just taken out by Martini. An optimistic attempt at passing down the inside didn't come off. Martini went into a spin, and of course Andrea had nowhere to go. He had to keep going straight, and eventually the two cars had a little kiss, let's say, up the escape road. Martini got away with it totally undamaged. Andrea's got a flat right rear, and he is limping back to the pits. But of course, the Lara Ford have got three cars which have either got mechanical or accident damage, and we don't know whether they're going to make it to the start again.
I think, John, the face of David Brabham just sums up the whole thing right at the moment. So David Brabham, of course, getting a start in this Grand Prix, but looking pretty miserable about the whole thing. It was Paolo Barilla that actually, his accident that stopped it for the second time. We're going to take a break now on Eurosport.
Well, David Brabham must really be wondering what the heck's going on. Being a Formula 3 driver, he thought he'd seen it all, but this is real Formula 1.
I'm not sure what happened to how it happened, but Barilla hit the wall.
We'll give Alan Tyndall and John Watson a chance just to reconsider all of those developments at Spa in Belgium as they try to set themselves up for a third start. And we'll be back with the full story if and when they do start, and rest assured you'll miss nothing of the main action from live pictures once more from Spa in Belgium as they try to set up for the third time in a day. Third time lucky, we hope. We shall see. It hasn't even started to rain yet, and that, as John Watson and Alan Tyndall will no doubt point out, may be an additional hazard. Not that we need them now, but here's our commentary team once more.
Well, back at Spa, in what can only be described as a bit of an auto jumble at the moment, it looks like we've got about 15 minutes before we go to the start of the third attempt at the Belgium Grand Prix. The situation is the drivers are all out of the cars at the moment. It is a complete restart after two series of accidents that have failed to let us secure the first two races. But you're looking at Riccardo Patrese, of course, out of the car and discussing the whole situation. And indeed, John, there is a lot to discuss because cars have gone under quite a bit of strain here in those two starts.
Yes, indeed, and we witnessed at the second start, Berger made an atrocious start. Now, one of the problems with a racing car at a start is that the clutch is a very small piece of equipment on the car. It's not like the clutch that you have on your own road car. These things are not designed to do stops and starts and stops and starts. They've really got about a useful start life of about 2 starts. And once you go beyond that, the things are really onto very thin ice. And I wondered, did Berger maybe have a problem with his clutch which caused him to have such a poor start? Now, we've all got to go through the same process again. So everybody's going to be sitting on the grids, in the gear, revs built up to maybe 10,000 or more RPM. And then you've got to go and you just hope that the clutch holds up, that the car doesn't start to creep in the grid, or that when you do drop the clutch, that the clutch actually bites and gives you the grip to get off the line. So mechanically, the cars are really getting a right torturing. That's one of the biggest problems. And this start isn't on the flattened level. It is slightly uphill, which again is a further problem.
Problem indeed, because you can see them clearing up the top of Radion. That was where Paolo Barilla crashed very, very heavily indeed. Lucky not to be hurt, and indeed that was the cause of the second stoppage.
Well, there's somebody who supports Alain Prost, Allez Alain. A few French spectators making it over to Belgium for the 1990 Grand Prix Part 3.
And while they work to clear up the track, we'll take a change of tone somewhat and look ahead from what was to have been the main event of the afternoon and will be eventually to what will be the main event of the evening here on Eurosport Live. In tennis, the Tournament of Champions, which will come to you from Forest Hills in New York, beginning at around about 6 o'clock this evening. Lendl against Krickstein in the final. Let's pick up the semi-final action as Henri Leconte was the opponent for Ivan Lendl. It's 1-all. Lendl leads 4-1 as we join it with Paul Hutchins.
Inzwischen, was in den vergangenen Minuten passiert ist nach diesem zweiten Start, es hat nämlich 2 voneinander völlig unabhängige Unfälle gegeben. Den einen haben Sie gesehen, Es war der Dreher des Italieners Martini mit dem Minardi, ein Dreher, der den darauffolgenden Andrea De Cesaris mit dem Dallara Ford mitgerissen hat. Dadurch kam dann auch De Cesaris von der Strecke ab. Das war ein harmloser Unfall. Wesentlich schlimmer hätte der Unfall in der Bergabfahrt hinunter nach Eau Rouge ausgehen können. 3 Autos dicht hintereinander, Barilla, Alboreto und David Brabham. David Brabham hat uns gesagt, ich habe nur gesehen, dass Barilla voll gegen die Mauer geprallt ist. Es war ein ziemlich schwerer Unfall. Ob Öl auf der Strecke war oder ob sich der Fahrer gedreht hat, das weiß er alles nicht. Auf alle Fälle 3 Fahrer waren in diesen Unfall verwickelt, nämlich David Brabham, dessen Vater Jack Brabham hier mehrere Grand Prix-Rennen in Spa bestritten hat. Dann Barilla, der junge Italiener, der aus seinem völlig zertrümmerten Minardi heil herausgekommen ist. Sie haben gesehen, der Fahrer ist ausgestiegen. Und wenn solche Unfälle auch oft sehr, sehr wild ausschauen, wenn die Flügel, wenn die Räder, wenn die Schnauzen wegbrechen, die Überlebenszelle, das eigentliche Cockpit ist heil geblieben und darum auch Paolo Barilla bei diesem Unfall nichts passiert. Michele Alboreto hat Glück gehabt, ihm ist auch nichts passiert und das ist sein Teamkollege, der Italiener Alex Caffi. 22 Andrea De Cesaris, der es also jetzt noch ein 3. Mal versuchen wird, nachdem er vorhin in diesen Dreher von Martini verwickelt wurde. So lichtet sich jetzt langsam das Starterfeld. Von den 26 Autos werden im Augenblick nur 23 übrig bleiben. Das ist der Franzose Olivier Grouillard mit dem Osella. Sieger der Vorqualifikation Freitag früh. Die beiden Ligier waren von der Vorqualifikation befreit. Durch den Rückzug von Monteverdi Onyx, dem Schweizer Team. Dem Eurobrunn-Team geht es auch nicht gut. Der Schweizer Gregor Feutek ist ohne Vertrag für heuer und fürs nächste Jahr. Marc Surer ist Fernsehkommentator für die Schweiz, ist hier seinen letzten Grand Prix gefahren in Spa, das war das Jahr 1986. Ja, und die Schweizer Farben im Rennsport trägt im Augenblick vor allem Peter Sauber mit seinen Mercedes Silberpfeil. Barilla, Alboreto, Brabham, diese 3 Fahrer waren am Ende des Feldes. Nachricht von der Minardi-Box. Paolo Barilla soll mit dem Ersatzwagen des Teams jetzt an den Start gehen, hat diesen schweren Unfall im 6. Gang in der Eau Rouge-Senke, also zum Glück unverletzt überstanden. 1 Minute noch. Seit etwa 10 Jahren ist man ja im Formel-1-Sport dazu übergegangen, Cockpits zu konstruieren wie für Jagdflugzeuge. Das Kohlefaser-Carbonfiber-Chassis der Formel-1-Autos ist heute bereits so weit entwickelt, dass es auch einen Anprall bis zu 400 Kilometer pro Stunde problemlos überstehen könnte, ohne zu brechen. Aber das Problem für die Fahrer wäre dann natürlich die plötzliche Verzögerung von 300 oder mehr als 300 Kilometer pro Stunde auf Null. Die heutigen Formel-1-Autos sind schon wieder sehr, sehr schnell geworden. Auf dem Hockenheimring war Gerhard Berger der schnellste auf der Geraden mit 348 Kilometer pro Stunde. Eine Art inoffiziellen Weltrekord hält Nelson Piquet mit 352 km/h in Monza. Aber das war noch die Zeit der Turboautos mit bis zu 1400 PS. Die heutigen Formel-1-Motoren bereits über 700, an die 750 PS. Zum 3. Mal die Aufwärmrunde in Spa. Senna vor Berger und Prost. Abbruch nach der ersten Runde heißt selbstverständlich, dass das bisherige Rennen annulliert wird. Abbruch nach der 2. Runde würde bedeuten, dass der Grand Prix dann in 2 Läufen stattfindet. Erster Lauf, da werden dann eben die beiden 2 Runden in diesem Fall gewertet und ein zweiter Lauf dann der Rest der Distanz. In diesem Fall wäre aber auch der Stand des Abbruchs entscheidend für die neue Startaufstellung. Abbruch nach einer Runde bedeutet 0 Rennen, es geht wieder zurück zur alten Startaufstellung und nicht die Startaufstellung. Analog dem Stand des Rennens zum Zeitpunkt des Abbruchs. Das heißt, Gerhard Berger behält natürlich seine 2. Startposition. Thierry Boutsen, der schon auf Platz 2 vorgekommen war, seine vierte. Selbstverständlich konnten jetzt in den Pausen zwischen dem ersten und dem zweiten oder auch zwischen dem zweiten und dem dritten Start die Reifen gewechselt werden. Es ist ja ein völlig neues Rennen. Wer will, kann selbstverständlich auch nachtanken. Der erste Start war gelungen.
A little later than the build time, but as you can see there, we're off on the parade lap once again, and hopefully we're set for a third and successful start this time as we rejoin James Hunt and Murray Walker.
Yes, third time lucky, we hope. As you see, Senna, Berger and Alain Prost leading round on the parade lap for the third time. Unsurprisingly, Paolo Barilla, who had the complete rear half of his Minardi wiped off, is not starting. But bad luck for Barilla has turned into good luck for Martin Donnelly, who you will have heard from earlier on when he came into the commentary box to join us, because Derek Warwick's car has been repaired and Martin Donnelly...
For that, they're on the warm-up lap once more for the restart of the Belgian Formula One Grand Prix. It's been something of a motor insurer's dream so far. Let's hope this time it's for real. Join our commentators once again, live at Spa-Francorchamps.
Well, the word sensational is a word that's often devalued through overuse, but it doesn't even begin to describe what's been happening here at Spa this afternoon, because you're looking at the cars on their third warm-up lap, not in succession, but their third attempt to start the Belgium Grand Prix. Already we've seen a major accident in the first attempt at the hairpin at La Source, which involved about 8 cars, and then on the second attempt we had an accident at the top of Radion, the really frighteningly fast corner at the top of Eau Rouge, where Paolo Barilla's car was extremely badly damaged, John, and he was lucky to step out of it.
Well, he stepped out of it totally unharmed, but there wasn't very much left of his Minardi Ford. I think what was left will go into the biffer bin. But really, now we come up to the start of the third start of the Grand Prix. But I did notice at the start of the second Grand Prix, once the red light went on, it changed really very quickly indeed, I thought, to green, and that may be another reason why Gerhard Berger, who had such an appalling start, did get caught out. I thought maybe it was a problem with the clutch. It could be a combination of things, but certainly the light went from red to green very quickly indeed. And let's really watch what happens on the third start, whether the starter Roland Brunsenegger is again quick with the finger or he's going to give them a little longer.
Well, let us also tell you who's actually going in this part 3, you might say, because Donnelly is back in. They have repaired Derek Warwick's car, which was damaged in the first start accident, and Donnelly is in it. Derek Warwick is in the spare Lotus. Suzuki is not going, and Barilla is not going. So there you are. Again, it'll be the McLarens in the front row of the grid with Ayrton Senna and Gerhard Berger, who has another chance to improve his start. And indeed, not only did he have a bad start the last time, he also brought his car right across Prost, which I'm sure didn't please him too much. Prost and Boutsen on the second row, Mansell and Nannini the third, Patrese, Piquet, the green flag from the back, red lights are on. And
again, it's a very quick start. The red light went to green very quickly indeed. But we've seemed to have so far, and Senna now locks up his wheels, but again in the middle of Brabham, locked on his brakes. But let's have a look and see, had they all managed to make it round La Source? Well, we appear to have had a clean start to the third restart of the Grand Prix, but we've still got to go through another 43 laps.
Right, so 189, just a little less than that now, miles ahead of them, and thankfully everybody breathes a sigh of relief as they stream out of Radion onto the Kemmel Straight up to 195 miles an hour, then bang on the brakes, and it's Berger second, then the Ferrari, then Boutsen.
Yes, and just behind Boutsen, Riccardo Patrese managed to slide up the inside of Nannini. Nannini losing one place to Patrese, but it's Senna, Berger, Prost, Boutsen, Patrese, I think Nannini, and then Nelson Piquet.
So this time that we're watching Boutsen, of course, in the Williams McLaren, a gentleman we'll probably see quite a lot of it during this Grand Prix, as he is, of course, the big local hero and winner recently in Hungary. But it's a McLaren advantage out the front. Berger in a much happier position than he was on the last start at the moment, of the two McLarens just beginning to eke away slightly now from Alain Prost in third place.
Yes, Senna again leading Berger in second place, and Senna not really getting, at this point of the first lap, the kind of advantage that he had when we had the first start. Remember then it was Boutsen who ran in second spot, and Senna was able to pull away really very quickly at the end of the first lap of the first start. He had over 2 seconds of a lead, but in the current state, Berger is certainly within a second of Ayrton Senna at the front.
They're coming through the very, very fast approach now to this Blanchimont corner. That's behind them now into the bus stop. Senna, Berger, and it's a little bit closer. Prost, then Nannini, then Piquet. No, it's somebody in there.
Piquet, Nigel Mansell running in 7th spot behind Piquet, but quite a long way behind. But now it's the 2 McLarens, Prost in the Ferrari, Boutsen in his Williams Renault, not a Williams McLaren, Alan. Then Patrese, Nannini, Piquet, Nigel Mansell surprisingly far down. But of course he was in a spare car. He changed to the spare car after the first restart. So Senna now onto the straight, trying to get away from teammate Gerhard Berger. And at the minute, Senna has a lead of just 0.8 of a second over Berger, and they are a further 0.9 ahead of Alain Prost in 3rd place.
So let's quickly update you on the top 20 at the end of the first lap. Senna, Berger, Prost, Boutsen, Patrese, Nannini, Piquet, Mansell, Alessi, Capelli, Bernard, Modena, Nakajima, Gujamin, Pirro, Martini, Warwick, Cafe, De Cesaris and Griard.
Gerhard Berger, 2nd place behind Ayrton Senna, coming down the hill now. This drop down the hill into this lovely 5th gear, Fuho, I think it is, corner, and that's where we've seen some spectacular shots during the qualifying and practicing over the past 2 days. There we are in car with Thierry Boutsen. Boutsen in 4th place behind Alain Prost. You're getting a little bit of a view from Boutsen. Like you can see the front wheels, I get an indication there's a little bit of understeer with Boutsen's Williams at this point in the race. The front wheels turning in, but he's having to use yet again quite a lot of lock to hold the car in. And that's quite a common thing with a car on full tanks at this very early part of a race. And it's really a time of the race you have to be very thoughtful about the car, in particular the tyres, that you don't abuse or overuse the tyre. But Prost coming through there behind Berger, and Boutsen now trying to close the gap to himself and Alain Prost.
Accelerating out of the bus stop up to 3rd gear, snatching 4th out of there. There's Nannini going through, and that's just the point where Piquet had his accident yesterday in 2nd qualifying. Prost and now under a little bit of pressure, one feels, possibly from the Williams there, with Boutsen closing in, and Patrese certainly under pressure from Nannini. Then Piquet, and then Alessi, Mansell, Capelli, Bernard, Modena, Gujamin, Pirro, Martini, Warwick, Cafe, De Cesaris, Griard and Larini.
We almost got a great shot with Boutsen in camera going through the Eau Rouge and up through the radio. Here we've got, I don't know, I think it's Modena coming into the pits, but Alain Prost with Boutsen now getting closer to him. And I think that Prost is also beginning to close a little bit up towards Gerhard Berger. Remember, it was Prost this morning who was the quickest, and comfortably so too. But Boutsen, who's running in 4th behind Prost, holding on for grim death. He doesn't want to let Prost get away. He knows that Prost was so quick this morning, and he feels, I'm quite sure, if he can stay with Prost, that Prost can maybe draw him up to the 2 McLarens and at some stage hopefully get them past them.
It could have possibly been Nakajima coming into the pits there, because we don't see him on the lap charts. And the McLarens still stamping their authority on this race, but of course very early days indeed. Only 2.5 laps completed, but it's taken us long enough to get that this afternoon at this sensational Grand Prix, which is on its 3rd start now. So Senna, Berger, Prost, then Boutsen, these 4 beginning to eke away a little bit from the rest of the field at the moment. There it is, Nakajima, and of course he was one of the many that had damage. He was involved in the first non-start, you might say, the first accident at La Source hairpin.
So Nakajima's race ended after 3 attempts, and here are the 4 leaders: Senna, Berger, Prost, Thierry Boutsen, the Belgian, who wants to continue that success he enjoyed 2 weeks ago in Hungary and really would love to win his Belgian Grand Prix. Not the most demonstrative personality in motor racing, but a man who gets on with the job in a very methodical and quiet way, one might say. But Nannini now closing up to the back of Patrese, and Nelson Piquet now also beginning to close up to the back of Nannini. But Senna, the man in the lead through Eau Rouge, over the radio, that very quick blind crest at the top of Eau Rouge. Car goes light there, and the curbs, the track seem very, very narrow indeed.
And if there's one place, I think, in the motor racing world that you want to go and see drivers really earning their retainers, it's the top of Radillon, the top of Eau Rouge there. Riccardo Patrese, well over 200 Grand Prix now to his credit. And there you can see Nannini in behind him, and then Piquet being dropped a little bit at this moment. So Piquet up, and Alessi would be behind him, and Mansell having a very disappointing run. Of course, you've got to remember that he's in the spare car because he was majorly involved in that very first stoppage.
Nannini currently running in 6th spot. Riccardo Patrese ahead of him. Now Nannini was able to handle Patrese very comfortably indeed in Hungary. He got past him where other people got stuck for a very long time. But again, at this part of the race, the cars are heavy. They're running almost maximum fuel load. And it would be a little bit imprudent, I think, for somebody to try and push very, very hard to get past another car at this point. There's still a lot of racing to go. We're on the 40 laps to go at this point. So Nannini can afford to be maybe a little bit thoughtful about what he wants to do in the next 5 or so laps. But here we are, in fact, with Nannini coming up through these Blanchimont curves. That's the first one. This is the second one. This is the real, what I call a white knuckle job. You really hold on so tight on the steering wheel, your knuckles go white, the blood gets drained away. And now into the bus stop chicane. Patrese, Nannini behind him, and Piquet behind Nannini, but falling back from Nannini.
And they have now completed 4 laps of this 44-lap race, and the McLaren's out front, then Prost being harrowed by the 2 Williams behind, particularly Boutsen, and then Nannini close in behind Patrese. So it's fairly well in formation, except that we're missing a Ferrari at the moment. Not totally missing him because he's back in 9th spot, Nigel Mansell, and I would say probably, John, at this moment, a fairly unhappy man.
Well, indeed he would be. Nigel Mansell must have a major problem with the spare car. He had to jump into that car. It could be that the car was not set up for Nigel. Alan Prost being much shorter than Mansell, so maybe they had to compromise. But generally I would think that there's something wrong with Mansell's car for him to be dropping back. He's now behind John Alesi, who is an 8th, and I think it's just a further unhappy race and a chapter of unhappy races for Nigel Mansell in this 1990 season.
Barry Boutsen using all the road there in the Williams. He has had a pretty good month, you might say. He's become a father, he's had a win, he's had a fastest lap, he's had a pole position, but of course the one that he would dearly love to win above all would be his home Grand Prix. And that's a fairly tall order. Indeed, Frank Williams even yesterday was saying that he didn't expect to have a Hungary result here, but that's very early speculation with a very long way to go.
Well, I talked to Frank Williams a few days before the Hungarian Grand Prix, and he didn't anticipate a victory there. You never know in Formula One, and with the competition now being so intense at the top, with these 4 teams, really each one of them is capable of winning. You never know what the outcome can be, but that man Alan Prost in 3rd place is beginning to look rather threatening towards Gerhard Berger's second place. Alan Prost, remember, being absolutely comfortably the quickest this morning in the warm-up session, and now Prost beginning to settle down and getting closer and closer to Gerhard Berger.
Senna, Berger, Prost, Boutsen, Patrese, Nannini, Piquet with 5 laps completed. And Senna with a gap at the moment of 1.59, not anything like he had on the second start where he really streaked away on the first lap, and that must have been a bit frustrating to have to give that little advantage away, because Berger now with a much better start is staying very much in contention, and he has really got a worry in his hand because Prost is definitely hanging on in there, obviously not wanting to use up too much tyre energy. They're virtually all on B compound tyres, which means they hope to go the distance.
Yes, and just this is right now, and there's a car stop. One of the Delaros are out. Can we see it's De Cesaris? No, it is De Cesaris, yes. But Prost, on this part of the circuit where horsepower on its own isn't the most important factor, the Ferrari still considered to be a better car. That was Emanuele Pirro, in fact, not De Cesaris. The Ferrari is generally considered to be the better handling car of the 2, but of course the big long straight here does assist Berger, and if he can get onto that straight quickly, then Prost will find it quite difficult to close up. But here on the handling section of the circuit, Prost is getting closer and closer, but now It's the long climb back up through these Blanchimont curves, on the way up to the bus stop chicane, and then on to the start-finish line where the pits are.
So, Alan Prost, 35 years old, a man that has broken virtually all statistics in motorsport except pole positions, and that, of course, goes to Senna there, who completed his 48th pole. Front row of the grid here in Belgium. But Prost now certainly putting a bit of pressure on Berger, and remembering that if he wants to keep his World Championship hopes really alive, he's got to get past this second place McLaren and get into a position at least to try and harry Senna.
Yes, but Gerhard Berger is beginning, I think, to lose contact to Ayrton Senna, and is probably actually holding up Prost. Although Prost isn't running right up the gearbox of Senna at this point, it's not really possible in these very fast corners to get that close. But I'm almost certain that if Prost was able to find a way past Berger, he might be able to ease gradually up to Senna. But the difference in lap times between Senna, who's had the quickest lap up to date, in fact that's just been passed by Patrese. Patrese's now got the quickest lap. That's an indication as just to how competitive the front of the field is.
Berger, you're watching in second place. There's the top six, as you can see, the people who are at the moment in World Championship qualifying points situation. But Prost it is who's right behind Berger, and what an amazing man he is. He's got 636.5 to be accurate points already in his career. His course, he's got 43 wins, an all-time record, a record that's going to be very difficult to beat. In fact, I'd even stick my neck out and say the only man that possibly could do that would be Senna. But he's a long way to go to catch that kind of record. So Prost gets very close at this point of the circuit every time.
Yes, he does, and this is, to say, the handling part of the circuit principally. But Gerhard Carr, he may be running with a little bit less wing, principally because the long straight is the one place where you can get past people quite easily. But here we are with Thierry Boutsen, who's beginning to drop back a bit from Alain Prost. Prost in third, Boutsen in fourth, through Blanchimont, just running out to the edge of that curb, not touching it. You don't want to get near that curb in reality, because that could throw the car into a spin ever so quickly and ever so easily. But Prost, quick through the twisty bits, losing out on horsepower and on straight line speed to Berger in the Honda-powered McLaren. But nothing to worry about too much. This is still really very, very early in the race indeed. And as the cars lighten, as the fuel load diminishes, then we will see different tactics coming into play by all the drivers, but certainly by Alain Prost, Gerhard Berger, the two principals who are challenging for second place.
Every time I see them coming up that hill, that 1 and 6 rise out of Eau Rouge, I even sigh a little bit, a sigh of relief. Prost is there. Patrese, we noticed, just behind Boutsen, a little bit closer in that lap. Let's give you the position after lap 7. Senna, Berger, Prost, Boutsen, Patrese, Nannini, Piquet, Alessi, Mansell, Capelli, Bernard, Goujimin, Modena, Warwick in 14th place, Capi 15th. 16th is De Cesare, 17th Martini, Griard, Lardini, Alboreto. Then just flicking over onto the second page before we get the final runners, and we know that already we have lost Pirro out of the Grand Prix. And of course, just to remind you, Suzuki and Barilla did not start.
Ayrton Senna is extending his lead gradually over Gerhard Berger. It's just over 2 seconds now. Senna on that last lap, recording the fastest lap so far in the race of a 1 minute 58.712 seconds. Berger second, Prost third, and those are the two that are really having the battle at the moment. Pirro, Nakajima out. Nakajima had engine. We think Pirro also had an engine. There looked to be a lot of steam and smoke coming from behind the cockpit of the Dallara Ford, so a very unsatisfactory outing for Pirro, but also for the Dallara team. They were involved in a number of the incidents in both of the first 2 starts. But Alain Prost exiting the chicane, coming up now past us here from the commentary point. That semi-automatic gearbox of Prost, he doesn't have to take his hands off the steering wheel. He just has 2 little levers, one on either side of the steering wheel. He flicks one with the right hand to go up the gear, and he wants to go down the gearbox, he goes with the left hand. And on this type of circuit, that probably is an advantage, because you don't really have the need for the kind of control that a manual gearbox has.
Did he have a little problem with his gearbox there, because he suddenly dropped back a fair bit from Berger?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it just depends on the camera angle. It's very hard to judge it because of the very long straight there. We're looking down through the camera, and that long lens does alter the perspective. But I would say there's not much difference, Alan. The two cars are more or less, I would say, similar position to where they were. Maybe Prost himself has chosen just to drop back that little bit and rethink the situation and try and get another run. As you've mentioned in the past before, if you get caught behind a car, it's very easy for you to actually slow down and run at the pace of the car you're running at, rather than actually dropping back and then building your speed up and gaining your momentum and coming up and trying to get through in one clean swoop. But Prost now again, he's closing back up to the back of Gerhard Berger. If you look at Jean Alesi, he looks to be having a bit of a struggle with his Tyrrell Ford. Mansell behind him, Capelli behind Mansell.
Alesi's in 8th place, Mansell 9th, Capelli in 10th place. And Alesi just not quite as much on the pace at this Grand Prix as he has been during the year, and one wonders if all the pressures, all the rumours about where he'll go next year, his family, I believe, John, seemed pretty confident that he might go to Ferrari, but that not everybody else in the paddock is that confident.
Well, no one really knows what's going on. There's so much mystery around all this, but now Prost really has got as close to Berger as we have seen at any point, and Boutsen, of course, closing on Prost, and Gerhard Berger really is, I would say, responsible for those 4 cars beginning to concertina.
And there's the very interesting situation indeed. Berger 2nd, Prost 3rd, Boutsen 4th, Patrese all still pretty close together, and one gets the feeling that Gerhard Berger, at the moment possibly unintentionally, possibly not, is doing a magnificent job for his team leader Ayrton Senna, because it means that Senna is out there. He's got a nice little cushion. He can more or less run at the pace that he wants to at the moment, and he's just put in the fastest lap of the race so far, 1:58.237, but it means that he can really judge his tyre wear, judge the race pretty comfortably, with Berger acting as the block against his main rival, Alain Prost.
Yes, and here we are, Thierry Boutsen in the Rivage. This is a long, slow, it's a 3rd gear corner, but the road's always falling away from you. This left-hander here, much more satisfying for a driver. Now we're dropping downhill under the bridge, coming into Pouhon, this 5th gear corner, in early, let the car run out to the curb, flat out at that point, and exiting at about 160, maybe slightly more miles per hour. It's a wonderful feeling. You get an enormous G load. Really, your neck and arms feel like they're going to be pulled from your body as you go through there.
Incredible speed, 160 miles an hour. They still don't slow down too much for this section. They're well over 100, building up to about 130 miles an hour at Stavelot when they come back onto the old road section. And of course, it really probably is truly the only great road racing circuit left. We have these street races, but they're nothing to this, John.
Well, this is motor racing, maybe in the eyes of many people, what Formula One should be about. You're racing on roads. They've made many changes to the Spa circuit over the years, and the link that we now use, which of course shortened the circuit, is in effect almost like a natural road circuit. But it is without doubt, I think, the most testing circuit on the Formula One calendar these days, and it's a circuit most drivers do profess to enjoy, though I think it's a circuit that you have to have the greatest deal of confidence in your own motor car, but you have to have the confidence in yourself to be able to go into the corners like this, the Eau Rouge, almost flat out, through the radio and onto this long Kemmel straight. That's a real testing part of any Grand Prix circuit.
Well, after 10 laps, Senna has just about a 2.8 second advantage over his teammate Gerhard Berger. Prost is 1.1 second behind Berger, but Boutsen is now crawling all over Prost and looking very aggressive in the Williams.
Yes, and I don't know whether Prost is just seesawing deliberately to give himself that little bit of rest that he wants before he has another surge up to the back of Berger. In doing so, of course, Thierry Boutsen's hopes rise because he can see himself closing up to Prost. But that situation, I think, is just sort of ebbing and flowing as Prost decides what he wants to do in the part of the racetrack he wants to be on. He knows there are places where he's got an advantage over Berger, so he's going to try really and capitalize on that. He also realizes he's got weaknesses, and the weaknesses really are on the parts of the track where you've got these long straights, and so he's going to have to think about it very long and hard and decide, well, where can I really capitalize on my strength and catch Gerhard maybe somewhat unawares. Nigel Mansell running very unhappily now in 10th place, been overtaken by Ivan Capelli. And really, Nigel, I think, would be quite content for this race to come to an end at this stage.
What a dreadful situation that would be. We're back aboard Boutsen's car in this frighteningly fast part of the circuit. But Mansell's year, he's had 4 non-finishes in a row. He's had 6 non-finishes this year, and back in 10th. That's not the sort of diet of motor racing that Nigel Mansell enjoys.
Well, Mansell's had just the most awful season. It promised so much. I had him marked down as being one of my favourites for the championship, but really nothing has gone right for him since Alan Prost has joined the team, and most things have gone pretty well for Alan Prost. I wonder if there's a little moral somewhere in that situation, i.e. whoever's a teammate of Alan Prost really does find life is not as easy as it might appear to have been at face value.
So Prost, a master in the car, and generally acknowledged as a master outside it too when it comes to the politics of motor racing. Gerhard Berger you're watching in second place, about 2.7 seconds behind Senna. And Mansell dropping, coming into the pits. Mansell in the pits.
Well, this is not in for a pit. This is not a tyre change. They will change all 4 tyres, but I would imagine there's something. Well, maybe not. He's had 4 tyres changed, nothing else. He's sort of shaking his head going out. So whether that was just simply a matter of a tyre problem, I doubt. But Mansell back out in the field, but of course that pit stop will have dropped him right back, and we'll have to wait until he comes round to complete this lap to see what position he is now in fact running in. But I suspect it's down in the 15th through 20th. That stop not doing his hopes of getting near the points, let alone in the points, any good at all.
But it didn't look anything like the normal Mansell aggression there, John. It looked as if he was just totally fed up with everything.
I think he was looking at the pits to say, oh, all right, Nigel, we've got a problem, you're not competitive, step out of the car. I think the team said, get back in that race, you never know what can happen. But of course it's a very forlorn hope from where Mansell would be now. So it's difficult sometimes to get your spirits and your heart going again after that kind of setback.
Terry Boutsen there just behind Prost, who's in picture at the moment. He seems to have dropped back a little bit again. He was right up behind the gearbox of Prost's car a few laps ago. They've now completed 12 laps, and Senna has 2.5. It's always hovering around that 2.5, 2.7 advantage. Berger in second place. Prost is very close behind that. Boutsen, Patrese, Nannini, Piquet just behind his teammate and out of the World Championship points at the moment. And there's that Eau Rouge again.
Yes, and Alan Prost just coming through the Eau Rouge has set a new fastest race lap. So I think, Alan, the thing that we're noticing with Prost, he's surging forwards and backwards, and really I believe he's just trying to gauge the pace, and he wants to have as much clean air around him as he can for him to build up the momentum. He's built it up again, and he's had the quickest lap in the race so far, and that's why we see him swinging backwards and forwards, why Boutsen sometimes appears to be catching, and why Prost himself appears also to be closing back up to the rear of Gerhard Berger's Honda McLaren. But Prost currently the fastest man on the racetrack, and beginning to close yet again up to the gearbox of Ayrton Senna, Gerhard Berger's McLaren.
And Martin Donnelly, news of him, who's having another miserable weekend, I'm afraid. He's heading for the pits, I think, with an engine problem, or in the pits with an engine problem. And remember, he was in Warwick's car that had been repaired after that first start accident. So that looks like the end for Donnelly finally this time.
Yes, Nigel Mansell, the other British interest in the race, he is now in 16th spot. So whether Mansell is going to make any progress, we've seen him fight so valiantly, let's say, from the back before, but this is really a very tall order indeed, 16th in a spare car. But look at Prost. Prost is going to have a little look down the inside of the bus stop, but he's not close enough to Berger to have a go, and that's not an easy place to pass. It's a very, very fast approach. You're approaching on a corner, and to get into the right part of the road and pass somebody there, you've got to be really alongside them long before the braking zone for it to be successful. Prost wasn't in that position, and he didn't do anything rash or silly. He realizes he's quicker than Berger. He'll have his time, he will judge it, and look, he's dropped back that little bit again. So at the end of this lap, we may well see Prost making another attempt to wrestle away second place from Gerhard Berger.
And unlike the Hungaroring, this is a circuit with good overtaking opportunities, particularly at the end of this Kemmel Straight. Now, Prost not anywhere near close enough to Berger on this lap to do anything about it, but that's one of the favourite spots as they come brake from about 195 miles an hour down into the second gear corner, taking about 85 miles an hour. There are also a few opportunities in this new section, but they're pretty dodgy, really, aren't they, John?
There's nowhere really I can see to pass that's secure or safe. I mean, in this section here, it's one speed, everybody's accelerating and braking, so there's no opportunity. Coming down the hill here, again, you've got to be right in the gearbox of the car you're following to do it. Going back to Alan Prost at the end of the straight, he's got now the attention of Ivan Capelli. Capelli, who got past Mansell earlier in the race, and now really is within 0.3 or so of a second of a Lacey in 8th spot. But Prost, back to Prost and Berger. And we can see that Prost really is now starting to make Gerhard Berger pay a little bit more attention to his rear view mirrors than he might have done previously.
And as we watch one Ferrari, we see the rather grim news of the other Ferrari, Nigel Mansell, back in 16th place after that pit stop, and really probably working out his contract here with Ferrari this afternoon, having been told to get back out there and race.
And Prost now really in a position to have a go. He's going to look down the inside. Oh, we missed a great opportunity there. There's a Prost looking to see if he could slide down the inside coming into the bus stop chicane, and he has done it. Prost has taken second place from Gerhard Berger. The director did a marvellous job of not letting us see it. Thierry Boutsen is now in fourth spot, but right on Berger's gearbox, so things happening here. Second, third and fourth spot being disputed hotly, but Prost snatched that. He had a very audacious move for Alan Prost. We have seen him perform a bit audaciously this year. Normally Prost has been not considered to be the most let's say thrustful overtaker on the Grand Prix circuit, but now Boutsen in a position to have a go down the inside. Look, pulling out alongside Gerhard Berger. Whether he's got the speed to maintain that position, yes he has. He's taken, and now, oh no, he didn't.
Well, that was an absolute heart stopper there, John, because we saw an attempt in the second start, I think it was, when Berger tried to do that to Boutsen to go past him, and he certainly slammed the door. And again, he's got his own back there, because it certainly looked like Boutsen had the advantage, the inside line for Lecombe, but Berger wasn't having any of it, and one would almost suspect that McLaren's brakes were slightly superior, but I would imagine at this level that's unlikely.
I don't think it was anything to do with brakes at all, Alan. It's just purely grunt horsepower. Honda horsepower down the straight are stronger than Renault horsepower down the straight, but Boutsen was much quicker, particularly in that situation where Berger had just been overtaken by Prost. Boutsen was capitalising on it. He was quicker out of La Source hairpin and quicker through the Eau Rouge and the Radion section. He carried that speed onto the straight. He was quicker in the first half, but Berger had the advantage in the second half, and that is why Berger was able to take the corner at the end of the straight and retain his third place. But now Alan Prost is pulled out, well, virtually 2 seconds in less than a lap on Gerhard Berger, and his sights are now going to be set very, very closely on the gearbox of Ayrton Senna's McLaren. Berger leaping across the curbs in his McLaren in that bus stop chicane. Very hard on a car when you do that. It really puts enormous shock loads into the car, the suspension. Every part of the car takes an enormous pounding. But here we are, Boutsen. The source hairpin, a bit of an oversteer there. Boutsen had to lift off, get back on the power. Look at the rear wing in his car vibrating and shaking as he accelerated. Very bumpy, that outside part of the corner.
Well, previously we hadn't been looking too much at the gap between first and second, but now we very much are, and it's 4.7 seconds. Prost is behind Senna, and he's pulled dramatically ahead of Berger. He's opened up a gap of 2.3 seconds. That's after 15 laps. Boutsen fourth, Nannini fifth, sixth Patrese, seventh Piquet, eighth Alessi, ninth Capelli very close behind him, and 10th Gougemin, 11th Bernard.
And Alan Prost had just set the quickest race lap to date, indicating that now that he's got past Gerhard Berger, he's going to get on with the program of going motor racing. He wants to win this race. He certainly doesn't want Ayrton Senna to win it, because 9 points for victory, 6 points for second place. If Prost can get those 9 points and Senna only gets 6 points, that will help Prost in reducing that lead that Senna has over him in the championship.
And he's definitely closing, John. It was 4.68 a lap ago. It's now down to 4.47. So he's definitely closing. Somebody just coming into the pits there. Can't quite see who it is. Number 22. But That's De Cesaris, who's having a pretty miserable day.
But Alan Prost now got a clear road behind him, a clear road ahead of him. But he'll be in contact, there'll be visual contact from the pits with the pit board. He'll have two-way radio contact with the manager of his particular car, the engineer that works in his car, advising him of the difference in time between first and second. And even look at the way he's pulling away from Berger. Boutsen now getting caught behind Berger. I'm sure Boutsen is capable of doing what Prost has done if he could get past Berger. But Ayrton Senna is responding to Prost's charge. Senna now down into the 157s as well. Prost yet again setting fastest lap, 157.623, and that gap is dropped by a further 0.3 of a second. It's now 4.1 seconds between Senna and Alan Prost in second place.
So a real prospect of a huge battle between the two men, which the whole World Championship depends on. That's what's in front of us here now at Spa. There's the man that's going fastest at the moment, Alain Prost, with 43 wins already to his credit. Of course, 2 world titles so far, and very much looking for the third now.
And just watching Gerhard Berger coming through that Le Cum section of the circuit. His car is sliding. He just locked a brake up there coming in. Locked the right front, I would say, but just watching Berger's car, he doesn't seem to be able to get the grip that Boutsen has, and certainly Alan Prost has. There's no doubt about Prost getting grip. That's why he's going quickly. It is not just a question of horsepower that makes one car quicker than the other. It's the ability for that car to transmit its power through the wheels, the rear wheels, the front wheels, the balance, this magical ingredient that a racing car needs to be driven quickly.
And we've just received some information on the absolute chaos that we had at the beginning of these Grand Prix, or the two beginnings of this Grand Prix. And there will be an inquiry after the race, evidently, regarding the first accident. And the second accident, the organisers have said, the reason they stopped the race immediately, it was in a very dangerous place, of course, at Radio, for Barilla's car, was that the car caught fire immediately, but it was immediately put out and the driver evacuated. But the accident was considered serious enough for the course director to bring the show to a close for the second time.
And Boutsen now again right on the gearbox of Berger's McLaren. Boutsen closing up under braking into the bus stop chicane. Berger, of course, opening the lead back out as he's on the gas earlier out of the corner. But Boutsen, I think, is getting himself into position very much the way Prost did, leaving big black marks as he accelerated out of La Source. First gear, second gear, 650 horsepower. Those two rear Goodyear tires not quite capable of containing it, but Boutsen now trying to find the best part of the circuit where he can take advantage of the speed he's got.
And at this stage of the race, just about 17.5 laps completed of the 44-lap race. Boutsen obviously fairly happy to be well in the hunt here at his home Grand Prix, but a lot happier if he could deal with Berger and then see how he could then deal with Senna and Prost ahead of him. But remember, this is his favourite place. It's a home circuit. He started his first Grand Prix here in 1985. He won in Formula 2 here, and he's working away happily there. Got a little bit of a quick dart on the oversteer there. Just had to correct it as we saw in that last corner.
Yes, Berger is under a lot of pressure from Boutsen. But just looking at my timing sheets here, Alan Prost has even eaten further into Ayrton Senna's lead. It's now a lead of only 3.5 seconds. So in the last 3 laps, we've seen Prost just chip away, taking 3 4/10 a lap out of the lead of Ayrton Senna. So we've got the prospect of a fairly exciting motor race.
Has gone up a place. Gujabin ahead of Capelli on Alessi's tail. That's for 8th, 9th and 10th positions.
Riccardo Patrese been beginning to slide away from the tail of Nannini's Benetton. Piquet in 7th, John Alesi 8th, Capelli 9th, Gugelman 10th, Berger 11th, and Stefano Modena, a driver whose name has been linked with a number of teams. We had that very on. We've got Berger coming into the pits. Gerhard Berger is in the pits. We suspect this is a tyre stop. Going the race on one set of tyres was a very optimistic hope, I think. Now, as we said, the sun is also beginning to break through, but Berger quickly, a good stop, 7.03 seconds. That's a very good stop for Berger. He's on a fresh set of Goodyear rubber, but of course he's lost that 3rd place he had, and now he's going to have a lot of work to get past to make up that ground.
Well, remember, we've only 18 laps completed of a 44-lap race, and this puts a whole new complexion on things, because it would surely mean...
And Riccardo Patrese coming into the pits now as well. Patrese doesn't look like he's in for a pit stop. This is coming in rather slowly. I think Riccardo has decided that his day is finished.
Was in 7th place.
Yes, that car is being pushed. Going to be reversed back into the garage. A mechanical problem of some sort. We suspect it may well be engine related. He was dropping back from Nannini, and it became very visual that he was dropping back as well. So Riccardo Patrese's Belgian Grand Prix is over for 1990.
So after 18 laps, the retirements so far have been Pirro, Nakajima, Patrese, and of course Suzuki and Barilla didn't start, and Donnelly also out with an engine problem. The order is Senna, Prost, Boutsen, Nannini, Berger now in 5th place after a pit stop, Piquet 6th, Patrese 7th, Alessi 8th, 9th is Guzmin, 10th Capelli. They're all very close together, those three. Bernard 11th, 12th Modena, 13th Cafe, Mansell 14th, Warwick 15th.
And looking at Derek Warwick, in fact, he's in the pits. He came in for a tyre stop. There he goes again, Warwick leaving the pits, but that was not a very quick pit stop. There may have been another problem that they were trying to rectify, but look at Boutsen over that curb again, driving almost the entire car over the inside of the curb, coming into the bus stop chicane. Thierry Boutsen lying in 3rd place, 6 seconds behind Alain Prost. Of course, that's Andrea de Cesaris. Ahead of him in his Dallara, he is being lapped. Boutsen will want to get ahead of de Cesaris before they come through the Eau Rouge. He's pulling out, getting alongside, passing, taking his line. Andrea de Cesaris, I think, lifting off the throttle a little bit to enable Boutsen to get through. But here we have Alain Prost, who really has now got Senna in his sights, because that lead Senna has is only 2.9 seconds. It's dropped from 3.3 to 2.9. So Prost is taking, on average, just under half a second out of Senna's lead.
And we thought, in fact, that Donnelly had retired. In fact, he hasn't retired. He's still in the race, but he's had an engine problem of some kind.
Yes, Donnelly's engine sounds like a bag of old nails, I have to say. It sounds like the V12 Lamborghini is probably about a V7 or a V9. It isn't running on all the cylinders, but Martin is struggling away there vainly and running as long as he can.
And there's the situation. Senna, Prost, Boutsen, Nannini, and the gaps we're really looking at 2.9. It's down now between Senna and Prost, down to 2.9 seconds. Then it's 6.7 seconds between Prost and Boutsen.
And we've just had a word from the pits. In fact, Patrese's problem was not an engine problem, but a gearbox problem. So the outcome is the same. Patrese's race is finished. He's going to have a nice early shower. He'll be out of the circuit, I would think, in about 20 minutes' time. And looking forward to Monza. But look at this battle here. Some of those people, Warwick, who's coming up to pass Donnelly, trying to get past. Well, that's going to cause a few. And there's Nigel Mansell. He's decided to give it up. End of his day. A very frustrated and unhappy Nigel Mansell, I must say. Walking away from his car, totally dejected. Olivier Grillard, Martin Donnelly, Derek Warwick, and Ayrton Senna. Now Senna's going to get held up by these three cars, and it's very important for Senna to try and get through and put the distance between himself and Alain Prost to the maximum, and he's going to have to wait until he gets through the Eau Rouge and up through Radio to try and get past the first of the Lotuses, Derek Warwick. Of course, once he gets through, then Prost will be have to contend with this problem, but these two cars, Donnelly and Grillard, racing for position. Senna now getting past Grillard, not realising that Senna's, but he has let him go through. So Senna now made up 2 places coming up the straight. It's only Martin Donnelly he's got to get through. Martin will have the blue flags being waved at him all around the circuit. Senna coming alongside, passing him, under braking, going into the rivage. So a heart-stopping moment for Senna for that little part of a lap, but now it's all down to Alain Prost to get through.
And Donnelly, in fact, has gone up into 16th position ahead of Grillard, so obviously the problems that we've heard he had not so bad. There's Alessi taking a stop, the second of the major players in this Grand Prix taking a pit stop for tyres.
Yes, indeed. Nelson Piquet with Gerhard Berger beginning to breathe down his neck. Remember, Berger came in, put on a fresh set of tyres, pressing hard, trying to make up the ground. Of course, having an advantage now in that with the fuel load lightening, his fresh tyre should give him a distinct advantage.
You're looking at the leader, Ayrton Senna, who's got just over 19 laps completed and leads Prost by 2.9 seconds. In third place is Boutsen, fourth place is Nannini, fifth is Piquet, sixth is Gerhard Berger, and seventh Alesi. Come back to us shortly at Eurosport.
Pit lane, and he's made up quite a few places already, and he's now pulling away from that little group, including his own teammate Derek Warwick. Now Prost has still got Martin to deal with, but I'm sure he won't cause him any grief and things. In fact, only into the pits.
2.8 seconds was the gap between Senna and Prost. It is now 4.1 seconds. So in lapping, Warwick, Donnelly and Griard, Senna has benefited. The old story. Senna, in the words of Alain Prost himself, seems to have an uncanny knack of getting past tail-enders or midfield men that he's lapping better than Prost does. And the gap nearly doubled in that one lap, and that's Boutsen. That is Thierry Boutsen out of his own Belgian Grand Prix on lap 22. Something has finished his race very obviously.
Yes, and he's parked it just opposite the pits, and it looks like a mechanical failure. The car seems to have four wheels on it. So an unfortunate day for the Williams team, because Riccardo Patrese, you remember, is already out with what appeared to be some mechanical trouble as he pulled into the pits at least. And there's Boutsen just undressing.
So with Thierry Boutsen out, as is his teammate, it's Ayrton Senna leading on lap 22 by 4 seconds from Alain Prost. Up into third position goes Alessandro Nannini. To fourth position goes Nelson Piquet. To fifth goes Gerhard Berger, who has changed tyres. Sixth now in the points are Leighton House, driven by Gugelmin. In seventh position, his teammate Capelli. Then in 8th position, Eric Bernard, and in 10th position, Modena, now that Alesi has been in for tyres. And that is the world champion, Alain Prost. 4.1 seconds was the gap at the end of 21 laps, and it's almost the end of the 22nd lap, so we'll be able to compare the gaps. It was 2.9, then 4.1, and it's Senna. Now Prost leads. Andy Prost comes into the pits. This is going to be really exciting. Let's watch this. Alain Prost now up on the jack. Senna is out, and the Ferrari mechanics get the tyres on. Prost last out, and he's still in second position, and both he and Senna are on new tyres.
Yes, and that was a pit stop race for the McLaren and Ferrari team, with a slight start to McLaren, which they actually increased their lead. Now Senna come out right in front of Nannini, and he won't want Nannini to pass him. Nannini's on hot tyres, knows what he's doing. Likewise, he'd like to get clear of Senna, who will have to feel his way around a little bit. Now Senna's taking the inside into the corner, making Nannini go the long way around. And he's held on to it, and he only needs now to go through the twisty bits, get his tyres working really properly, and he will pull away. In the meantime, Prost has got traffic between them, and that's traffic that they're racing, because Nannini, of course, is ahead of Prost on the road now in the race.
Yeah, Nannini, I remind you, was pushed off the course by Ayrton Senna at the last Grand Prix in Hungary and lost his possible chance of winning. And after the race, he said, I didn't like that, and I'm not going to forget it. Now, I'm not suggesting that he's going to try and push Senna off, but I am suggesting that he's going to be trying even harder than he might normally be doing, not to let the McLaren get away. And on lap 23, with Senna and Prost both having changed tyres, it is Senna leading, Prost second, Nannini that you're looking at in third position, Piquet is fourth, so both the Benettons now are in the top 4 places. Berger, who has also changed tyres, is fifth, Gugelmin is sixth, and we're coming now towards the end of the 23rd lap as the second and third men, Senna, McLaren Honda, Nannini, Benetton Ford, go round Blanchimont, that 6th gear, 180 miles an hour corner, brake, go down into third gear, into the bus stop, and you saw in the background the car in fourth position, Nelson Piquet. The leader is about to cross the line, and at the end of the 23rd lap, Ayrton Senna with Alain Prost going up to La Source in third. There is Senna, there is Nannini second, Prost is third, 3.8 seconds separates first and third, and Olivier Griard is in the pits in the Senna. We need to be looking at the race for the lead, because this is a repetition in many ways of Hungary, and they're coming up to tail enders again, and it's Donnelly.
And Nannini got pretty good toe off Senna. Remember that the Ford engine is now one very good competitive engine in Nannini's car. They've got it better and better, and he seems to be able to live with everybody on the straights. And in fact, he will be a considerable problem for Prost if he can catch this leading pair and join in the battle. So Nannini, remember, has not stopped at this stage of the race. They started the race on the same compound as both McLaren and Ferrari, and I think it would be optimistic of them to try and go the race on the one set, but we will see.
Yeah, I talked to Rory Byrne, the Benetton designer, just before the race began, and he said, I think we may surprise everybody by our tactics, which I took to mean going through non-stop. But of course, Nannini's tyres will have worn more than Senna's new set. Senna's definitely got an advantage. Donnelly ahead of the Brazilian in the Lotus, and Donnelly is in 17th place as Thierry Boutsen walks in to report to the Williams pit. He's got to go the long way round, he's got to cross the course. And Senna and Nannini, and Senna has got ahead then of Donnelly. As we look at Thierry Boutsen, sadly we can't hear what he's saying, but it would be in French anyway, so a lot of us wouldn't understand. And there's Senna. Nannini has got past Donnelly. The status quo is back to where it was, and Prost is catching Nannini. So on lap 25, Senna, Nannini, Prost.
Prost's new tyres are certainly working, because he just done a new fastest lap of the race by over 1 second. And I think it'd be true to say that the leader's tyres had gone off a bit as they went in, because I noticed, remember I called it about 3 or 4 laps before the leaders went in for the pits, and everybody's lap time seemed to have just slowed down a little bit, and that was clearly the tyres going off. Now Prost, who was some 4.6 seconds behind Senna at the end of that first lap after their pit stops, is now only just over 1.7 seconds behind Senna, but of course he's got Donnelly, or Warwick is it, in front of him. And in fact it's Warwick, of course, and he's made it past there, because that would, through the twisty section of the circuit, he could lose a fair bit of time. But Prost certainly getting plenty of grip out of his new set of tyres.
And that's a new lap record, 1 minute 56.466 compared with Alain Prost's previous lap record in the McLaren 1987, 1 minute 57.15. And you can see he's getting closer and closer to Alessandro Nannini. There he is. And Nannini has got a problem between him. It's Martini in the Minardi. Senna's already passed him. You just saw the Brazilian disappearing out of sight round the left-hander. And now if Nannini desperately needs to get past Martini as they come up to the bus stop, because Prost is bearing down on the Benetton, and Martini moves over and lets Nannini through. He couldn't let Prost through because he was on the wrong line, and Ayrton Senna has gone through to complete his 25th lap as Nannini, followed by Prost, taking Martini, and the gap is 3.3 seconds now between Senna leading and Nannini second, and Senna was exactly 2 seconds faster than Nannini on that lap, and he's really got the hammer down. So has Alain Prost, who's now got to do something about the Italian in front of him who won the Japanese Grand Prix last year, Alessandro Nannini in the Benetton, second in Germany, and that is Piquet in the pits. New set of Goodyear tyres, and there's a problem at the back. You can see this is a very, very long stop. 14.4 seconds. Well, there was a problem with both the left and the right rears, and Alain Prost does not seem to have a problem. He's absolutely delighted with the handling of the Ferrari in this race.
But a big hurry now for Prost to find a way round Sandro Nannini, because Senna on fresh rubber is going to pull away at least a second a lap from Nannini, I would guess. Probably more like a second and a half, or certainly for the next half a dozen laps or so before the initial freshness of the tyres goes away.
Lap 26, Senna leads Nannini by 3.4 seconds. You can see how close Prost in third place is to the Benetton. Gerhard Berger is up into fourth place, 10 seconds behind Prost. Piquet is fifth, 8 seconds behind Berger. Gugelmin is sixth, and Capelli, his teammate, is in seventh position. Eighth is Bernard. Ninth, what is Alesi after his tyre stop. And now this is Prost's opportunity. This is where he's good at getting past at the bus stop. And he's up alongside Nannini. No, he's not. He's just behind the gearbox of the Benetton. They accelerate as one out of the bus stop as Senna goes through to complete the lap. Nannini, Prost, 5.6 seconds. Now Senna has broken the lap record. 1 minute 56.1 to lead by getting on for 6 seconds.
Yes, and when I said a second and a half, in fact, he's that 2 seconds quicker than Nannini, and this is going to be very disturbing for Prost, because once again he hasn't been particularly quick through Eau Rouge when in the turbulence of following another car, and I don't think he's going to be in a position to go attack under braking here. We saw him have a go at the bus stop, but Nannini looked like a man who doesn't want to be passed, so he isn't that angry with Senna that he wants to wave Prost by to go and do something about him, when quite clearly Nannini has no chance whatsoever of keeping up with Senna at the moment. Prost, of course, as well as being in a terrible rush to get past Nannini, won't want to hurt this fresh set of tyres by overstraining it when it's pretty new, so again he will have to balance attack with a certain amount of defence of his fresh set of tyres, which doesn't, of course, make the problem.
And the Leighton House team were one team that were actually very confident that they wouldn't need to make a tyre stop. The Leighton House chassis is very, very kind to its tyres, and we've seen in the past that they've been able to go through non-stop, principally at the French Grand Prix at Paul Ricard in July. So Gugelmin and Capelli benefiting from that car's kindness to its tyres.
Gugelmin not had a great season. In fact, he's higher up than he's finished anywhere this season. His best finish was Hungary.
Alan Prost now pulling out to come alongside Nannini. He's taken second spot. He timed that absolutely perfectly. That was a classic overtaking maneuver. He got himself in position. Coming up, he was alongside before they really got under the brakes. Nannini had to concede the corner. If anybody wanted to give you a copybook example of how to overtake, well, there's as good a one as you'll see in a long time.
Well, copybook, he's known as the Professor, and he's now up into second place. But he is 7.5 seconds behind the leader, and that's quite a deficit to make up. He's at it already, he's chipping away, he's down the long Kemmel Straight. There's no way Nannini, I don't think, can reply to this. He might have a little attempt here, but your Ferrari versus Ford engine on a very fast circuit, 195 miles an hour, and we're aboard Nannini in this classic chase.
Yes, Nannini, we've gone to Nannini. He's getting a view of the back of the Ferrari, but really that's a Ferrari that's beginning to disappear into the distance, and Nannini, whether it was a good policy or not to not come in and change tyres, we will never know, but Nannini chose to stay out. Teammate Piquet has made the pit stop. Of course, he's in sixth spot, Nannini in third spot, and quite a long way ahead of Piquet.
Now, the people who are really close together in the Grand Prix are obviously Nannini and Prost for second and third. There's a long gap before Berger, who's 9.5 seconds behind Nannini. Gugelmin is a full 32 seconds behind Berger, but Piquet is close to him at 1.3 seconds for sixth place. So Piquet could possibly go up ahead of the Leighton House car.
Well, Alan Prost coming to complete the 28th lap, and I'm going to want to have a look at our timing monitor here in the commentary booth to see what speed, what time that lap was, because once he got past and then he'd be able to drive in that manner. Which you need to do is to have a clear road and just concentrate on closing that gap. Ayrton Senna currently leading the race. He's done a 55.963, yet again a new lap record, crossed to 56.4. So Senna half a second a lap quicker, and really since Senna's had that pit stop, he has just been able to pile the pressure on and pull away from first Nannini and now Prost. The gap is 8 seconds between Senna, in the lead, Alan Prost in second place, and really Senna doing an absolutely brilliant job. This is, if you like, domination, and really enforcing that domination.
And there you can see Senna's new fastest lap. That's the third time we've had a new fastest lap in this Grand Prix. Originally dated back to 1987, as we said, to Prost. Prost was the first one to break his own lap record. Then Senna has come in and really stamped down this time now, and is pulling away all the time from Prost, up to 8.04 seconds on that last lap. Nannini still third. Berger closing now on Nannini, we notice a little bit. But a long gap then before we get Gujmin, Piquet, Capelli, Bernard in 8th, Alessi in 9th place. And behind them we've got Modena, Cafe, Alboreto, Warwick, Derek Warwick in 13th place, Martini 14th, Martin Donnelly in 15th place, Brabham in 16th, De Cesaris, Riyad and Larini in 19th spot.
Well, Ayrton Senna really being absolutely emphatic this afternoon. Really, since I think yesterday morning, and that contract announcement, there's been an enormous amount of pressure within the McLaren team over will Senna sign, will he not sign, is he going to drive for Frank Williams? There's rumours of meetings as late as last Wednesday at Nice Airport between Williams and Ayrton Senna. Frank Williams' plane was seen at Nice Airport. Senna was not in contact, so the level at which these negotiations have been taking place between Senna, McLaren, Williams, at one point Ferrari, has been really pretty high-powered stuff. But since that agreement was announced, it's like Ayrton's had a weight lifted off his chest, and I believe it really is reflecting in his driving. I mean, a driver can drive with pressure, but the most important thing is to feel free in yourself, feel content in yourself, and here we're seeing Ayrton Senna doing precisely that.
Well, Ayrton Senna actually admitted last night to being thoroughly exhausted with the combination of negotiation and driving responsibilities. Touring round there, the Dallara, sounding very sick and obviously heading for the pits.
Well, that's De Cesaris' car, and there's a lot of oil smoke coming from the back of it. Extension engine rebuild, John,
because I thought we'd lost him earlier. But De Cesaris had a miserable day, really, hasn't he?
Yes, he had. It was a bad race for De Cesaris. In fact, a bad day for Dallara, one of the many teams that have had involvements in various incidents. Piro's car having to be changed on the start line of the first start, De Cesaris being knocked off by Martini in the second one, Piro then getting back in again for the third restart, and now De Cesaris, with Piro of course being out very early in the race with an engine failure, and now De Cesaris with a similar complaint, I would say. But Mauricio Gugelmin in 5th spot. No, he's now in fact been overtaken. Piquet's taken 5th spot from Gugelmin. Gugelmin is now back in 6th place.
And of course, we're sitting watching the Benetton there go around. The amazing thing is that if Senna manages to pull off this one, and he's pulling away again because it was 8.045 and it's now 8.2 seconds. Pulling it. Oh,
that's De Cesaris. He's just stopped at the bus stop chicane. It's a wise place to pull off, because with a car that was as sick as his, he would want to be somewhere well out of the way. Senna now lapping Alboreto and the footwork arrows. Up through Rivage onto the Kemmel straight, this long uphill straight where the Honda McLarens are getting up to 195 miles an hour. Braking somewhere probably around 100 metres, maybe even less than that, for this tight right and left. The Coombe chicane, then this more enjoyable right-hander with a nasty curve on the outside. You want to stay off that. You saw Mansell getting very sideways there in qualifying. Now down into the Rivage, this difficult, there's never any grip in that corner. Whenever you're driving the racetrack, you always feel the car sliding away from you all the time. Now dropping downhill, coming down to the Pouhon, the 5th gear. This very exciting and exhilarating and most satisfying corner. One of the many corners on Spa that really gives a driver a fantastic buzz. A buzz that makes being a Grand Prix driver so worthwhile.
Alex Caffey in 13th place is the next on his list, and he carves his way through the back markers. Senna, and the gap's come down a little bit, but that's probably due to the traffic. It's down to 7.6 on that last lap. It had been up as high as 8.2, but really one feels that Senna is very much in control of things at the moment. He, like his great rival Alan Prost, has also had 4 wins this year. There's little Alex Caffey. There's all kinds of funny rumours going around the paddock about him. I believe some people say there was a secret test with Ferrari last week, but others deny it.
Well, the others who deny it are in fact Caffey and some of his associates, but Ferrari are looking for a candidate to put in alongside Alan Prost. It seems that should Nigel Mansell not retire, and I think he is open to sensible offers, let's say, Ferrari are looking for somebody to put alongside Alan Prost, and I think Prost would prefer not to have a driver of a number 1 status or a comparable status to himself. He would much prefer to have a younger driver who would be a definite number 2 driver and allow him to continue with the winning at Ferrari. So Caffey was a name that was mentioned, and although Caffey denied it, that old saying of there's no smoke without fire, we have to wait and see.
Senna at his expert work then, and we can remember yesterday that fabulous qualifying lap he did. He made everybody else look untidy at speed, and we see Prost now coming up to try and get squeezed through Alboreto. So the 2 footwork arrows being dealt with by the leaders at the moment, and this could cost Prost a little bit of time, who incidentally has the gap now down to 6.4 seconds, which is not going to help.
No, the gap will open up again. Alboreto and that was wrong. Alboreto should not have done that. He knew that he was being lapped by Prost. Prost is one of the contenders in the race. He should have allowed Prost to go through on the inside, and now Prost will lose time to Senna, and this I think is something that is disappointing. Michele Alboreto is one of the most experienced and knowledgeable drivers in Formula 1, and Prost is being held up through the entire part of this circuit.
And Prost has got the new lap record now. Prost has done a 155.909.
Yes, he's finally made his way past Alboreto, but without any assistance whatsoever. And I must say, I can't emphasize enough that when a driver is being lapped, as Alboreto is, you don't lose any time in allowing the lead car or a car that's running for the front to go through. So why don't you just let him go through? If it costs you half a second, it isn't going to make any difference whatsoever to Alboreto's position in the field at this time.
So Prost, who had really been circulating very quickly, it's gone again. Ayrton Senna has just replied to that, and he has again broken the lap record. It's now down to 155.79, and this is some battle between the 2 titans, with the little variable of the traffic being thrown in.
Yes, and that little incident with Alboreto and Prost cost Prost about 3 seconds that lap, and he's dropped now to 10.3 seconds behind Senna. That illustrates just how easy it is for a driver to not show consideration to the leading drivers. That cost Prost 3 seconds.
With less than 12 laps to go, this is not a good situation for Prost. He's 10.3 seconds, as you say, behind, and that means that he really's got an awful lot of work to do. Nannini's still in 3rd place, who's incidentally only 7.6 seconds behind Prost, benefiting from that traffic as well. Berger's 4th, 5th place Piquet, and 6th now in the points Guillemin.
And we hear from the pits that Nannini is going to be brought in to have a fresh set of tyres fitted to his Benetton, and that means his 3rd spot isn't going to last very much longer, because Berger, who's currently only 4 seconds behind Nannini, will take that 3rd place. But the Benetton team have decided that there's sufficient laps left in the race for Nannini to come in, and if his lap times are dropping off too much, therefore they've decided to call him in. And one of the benefits here at Spa is that the pit entry and exit is relatively quick. The time lost coming in and getting out is sufficiently little to take the gamble on having a pit stop and changing to a fresh set of tyres. Ayrton Senna still in the lead, as he's been throughout the 3rd part of the Belgian Grand Prix. Remember, this is the 3rd start of the Grand Prix we've seen here in 1990. That lap, yet again, breaking the lap record, 155.583. There is no stopping Ayrton Senna today. And the gap between Senna and Prost has dropped even further. It's now 11 seconds. Ayrton Senna now reinforcing something over Alan Prost, and I think there's no more a delighted a man than Senna to do that in Alan Prost, the man with whom he had many battles, not just on the racetrack but off the racetrack last year when they were McLaren. Well, let's not call them teammates, because it ended up being almost what the opposite of teammates should be.
So we're expecting Nannini in the pits. We have had everybody else in the top 6 except Gujamin in the pits for a pit stop. Berger's just put in a very quick lap, 1:56.806, his fastest in the race so far. But Senna is the man, there's no doubt about that. The lap record tumbling lap after lap, and at the very great expense of Alain Prost. Very strange sight in a Grand Prix, a free track, not for long, because here comes Prost in second place, still very much not having given up the fight to try and close that gap on the McLaren.
Well, he's got an enormous task ahead of him, because at the speed that Senna's running at, really to take 11 seconds out of Ayrton Senna and then get past him, and we've only got 10 laps left in this race. I think that's a nigh impossible task. Alain Prost's best chance of victory at this point, I would say, is if Ayrton Senna runs into some form of mechanical problems, or he happens to get caught really badly in traffic. But with the amount of cars now running, there are only 18 cars on the track. I think that prospect for Prost really is disappearing.
There you can see the gap, 11.02 it was in the last lap, but the Senna will be just about coming out of the bus stop now, ahead of Prost, who enters it, complete his lap, and that will be 34 laps completed, which means 10 laps to go on this extraordinary Belgium Grand Prix, which has seen so much drama, most of it admittedly at the start. There's Nannini, still not pitted, but he may come in on this occasion, which will mean Berger will certainly go up into third place, but Nannini goes by.
Yes, Berger getting by Michele Alboreto, got through there more easily than Alain Prost was able to do, but Nannini has been, the pits are prepared for him to make a pit stop. Tactically, I don't think he can gain anything from doing it, but Gerhard Berger now down to 1.5 seconds behind Nannini, and really I think that third spot is in great jeopardy. Alessandro Nannini being penalised, I think, through not making a pit stop for tyres, which he really ought to have done if he was going to do it much earlier in the proceedings.
There's a long gap though between Berger and the next car up, which would mean that Nannini, if he did take the risk of going into the pits, would have the problem that if the pit stop was fumbled for any reason, we're inside his car at the moment, he could let Piquet get a bit closer, but he's a long way back. Piquet's 44 seconds back.
Well, Nannini here coming down the hill into this lovely Pujo corner in 5th gear, getting in early, then the car running out wide, just kissing the curb, and then swooping back in to make a second apex, and then right out the edge of the curb again. And say what a wonderful feeling it is to go through that corner. Not a corner to go off on. We saw Martini going off there in qualifying, but certainly a very exciting corner indeed. But Nannini really now struggling to maintain his third place. He's got Gerhard Berger breathing all over him, and well, we can't. Yes, Berger is in sight, and it's still about 1.5 seconds. There's not much improvement in Berger's, the gap between Berger and Nannini. Nannini really wanting to maintain his third spot to the bitter end. Of course, 4 points for third place are valuable to anybody, and as you can see now, Berger has reduced that 1.5 second gap to something less than that. Prost now dropping to 12 seconds behind Senna. Senna setting yet another lap record, 1:55.143. The man is absolutely possessed this afternoon. Berger now just 0.8 seconds behind Nannini, so he's just halved the gap between himself and Nannini in that last lap, and really I think at the end of this lap Nannini's hold on third place is going to be lost. Berger is really, I think, very quickly going to find himself elevated to third place, making it a McLaren first and third with the Ferrari, the sandwich in the McLaren, the meat in the McLaren sandwich.
Absolutely. And the situations after 35 laps, Senna leads Prost by 12.05 seconds. Nannini is in third place, in a very tender third place, because Berger's right in his tail. Then it's Piquet, Gujamin in the points in 6th place. Capelli is next up in 7th. Alessi, Bernard, Caffey, Alboreto, Modena, Warwick, Donnelly in 14th place. Brabham in 15th place. Martini, Larini and Gruard in 18th spot. retirements. Just to remind you, Suzuki Barilla didn't start. Nakajima retired on lap 2. Pirro on lap 6. Patrese lap 18 with a gearbox problem. Mansell out on lap 19 after a miserable day's racing. Goodson 22, huge disappointment here. And De Cesaris on lap 29.
Gerhard Berger closing on the Nini. He will want to get himself close enough to Nannini, coming up the hill, up through the Blanchimont curves, up to the bus stop chicane, because really the best chance he will have to pass Nannini will not be here. It will not probably even be into La Source Hairpin, but will be down from La Source through Eau Rouge and then onto the Kemmel Straight. And I anticipate that Berger is trying to get himself placed to pass Nannini on the Kemmel Straight on this lap, but they've got to get past Michele Alboreto. Yet again, the arrows, the football arrow is going to play as Alex Caffey. Nannini looking to get through, no, can't make it. This is really going to give Berger a big advantage because Nannini will have to back off. And look how much he's closed up to the back of him. Now really Berger, all he has to do is just time it right, pull out from behind. There he's got it, he's taken third spot from Nannini. Nannini really got held up by Caffey. And look at Nannini diving down the inside again. The two cars almost touching, almost a repeat of what we saw. Two cars side by side, and Nannini has taken back his third spot. Absolutely unbelievable. We saw Berger do this to Nigel Mansell in Hungary too. Look at Nannini, he's decided no way I'm going to give up. I got punted off the track in Hungary, I'm not going to get punted off. I'm going to, in fact, if anybody's going to put anybody off, it's going to be me. But Nannini back in third place, Berger back to fourth, and I'm sure Berger must be wondering.
Very much with a bloody nose, I think, at the moment, because Nannini had said in conversations here at Spa that he wasn't going to take that treatment from the McLaren again. It happens to be a different one, but my goodness, that was incredible stuff. That was a touch of the old Villeneuve days there, John.
Yes, a very exciting moment. While all that was going on, our friend Ayrton Senna, who happens to be winning this Grand Prix at the present, has yet again broken the lap record. It's now down to 1 minute 55.132. I mean, Ayrton Senna, this is a race for himself. But I feel what he's decided to do is not only does he want to win the race, he wants to win it his way. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a man driving completely restored to the level we saw from him, well, let's say before the negotiations about 1991 and thereafter were taking place.
Now, Nannini, aboard Nannini, this absolutely fired up person coming down into La Source, right down into first gear, and Berger, and they're just dealing with the Footworks arrows back marker there as they go through. And Berger now a little bit, I think, taken aback by all that. He's dropped back to 0.5 seconds, but interestingly enough, although Senna got yet another new lap record, Prost has actually slightly closed the gap. After 37 laps, it's down to 12.06. I don't think it's particularly significant. I don't really think there's much you can do about the McLaren out ahead, but look at this battle.
Yes, Berger again just pulled out just to show Nannini the nose of his McLaren in the Benetton mirror, but Nannini had the corner. He was sufficiently far ahead of Berger not to be worried by that. I don't think we're talking about Prost. I mean, he's just done a lap that is 0.2 of a lap quicker than what Senna's done. The pits at McLaren, they're in control. They will be giving all that information to Senna. I don't think there's anything to be concerned about. We don't know whether Senna had traffic on that lap, which could have accounted for him being that tiny amount slower than Prost. If it is a pattern, if we see a pattern over the next 4 or 5 laps, then let's have some cause for concern. Really, I think Senna's got this race absolutely and totally under control.
Well, what's totally under control is definitely not third place at the moment. Nannini seems to have got a second life. He's absolutely on the ragged edge. And remember, he hasn't changed tyres.
Well, there's one of the two Brabhams. That one just pulling off at the exit of La Source. Not a particularly good place to pull a car off, because some of the cars do run very wide on that exit, and I'd have thought the marshals will want to get that car out of the way as quickly as possible. There is a waved yellow flag. Prost getting the message that there's a car on the exit of the corner, but here we see Nannini down to the bus stop chicane. Bang, bang, over the curve on the inside. Oops, doing the same on the exit, but he's still in third place. Prost now has set a new lap record, 1 minute 55.087, and the gap is down to 10 seconds. But with only 6 laps left of the race, I believe Senna is gauging that lead There's nothing obvious that we can say could be a problem for Senna, but Alain Prost is undoubtedly fired up, having just broken the sequence of lap records which Senna has set.
38 laps completed, and what a Grand Prix, because we have the two greatest men out the front, Senna and Prost, absolutely battling it out, swapping lap records lap after lap. Gap 10.7 seconds between Senna and Prost, maybe a little bit large to change before the end of the Grand Prix, but these sort of speeds, who knows? And Nannini keeping a dynamite drive there to keep himself ahead of Berger. Nannini, remember, on the same set of tyres that he started out on. Piquet 5th, but that's a long way back.
Yes, but even further back, we've got a battle between the two Lotus drivers, Warwick and Donnelly. Warwick in 13th, Donnelly 14th. There's less than half a second between those two cars, and they're having a battle of their own. It's a battle of pride, I suspect, within the Lotus team. Both drivers desperate to be seen, to be getting the most from their cars. Both drivers very concerned about their futures. Derek Warwick, of course, a veteran now, and Martin Donnelly, a young pretender, but both absolutely desiring to get to know what they're going to be doing in 91, looking for either a new team or to stay with Lotus, but really concerned about the future of Lotus now that they have not got a major sponsor.
So the situation still the same up front after 39 laps. Senna Prost, we're looking at this great Nannini-Berger battle. Alessandro Nannini, who started his motor racing career in Fiat Abarth's saloons and was champion there. That was way back in 1981. Then he moved into Formula 3, became European champion in that category, then into Formula 2, drove world sports car races with Lancia, and then in 86 he joined Minardi, 87 with them, and then 88, 89 and 90 with Benetton. And he really has become an absolutely top-line driver now, and of course has one of the few drivers who at this stage of the championship has already signed for next year. In fact, John, I think we're calculating there are only about 7 seats absolutely secure at this stage.
Yes, indeed. There are not too many people who can sort of stand up and say, hand on heart, well, I've got a contract for 1991. We reckon about 7, and even one or two of those are not necessarily clear. Even the situation with Prost is slightly complicated because of the legal situation that exists between Mansell and Ferrari. Mansell claims, of course, to have a contract for 1991 at Ferrari in which he is the nominated #1 driver. So the situation for Prost is, I think, that they've agreed in principle, but there may not actually be a formal contract in existence. It will not happen, I imagine, until the Mansell situation has been fully resolved. There are 2 dates regarding that. One is the 31st of August, and the other is the 30th of September. So once those 2 dates pass, then I think we will see the true situation at Ferrari and the drivers they will have in their cars next year.
There's another driver who's definitely settled for next year, Gerhard Berger. He will, of course, stay with McLaren now, definitely with Senna as his teammate. But Berger's year in McLaren it possibly shows just how brilliant Senna is, because it hasn't been the total dominant McLaren year. And Berger's results, he's had a couple of seconds, a couple of thirds, but certainly no victories, and we know him to be a real charger. So, you know, his career is not advancing really at the moment, it's probably staying still.
It's been, I think, a slightly strange year for Gerhard Berger, because when he came into McLaren, he didn't really maybe appreciate the level of commitment that a McLaren driver of today is required to give. And like any Grand Prix driver, they believe they give a maximum commitment, but when you join McLaren, you've got to give a lot more. And this man, Ayrton Senna, is the man that I think has raised the level of commitment from a driver at McLaren. He is absolutely and totally dedicated to Formula 1 racing. And if McLaren ring up in the middle of the night and say you've got to go to Japan for 5 days testing, Ayrton Senna is delighted to do it. And I think that's something that Gerhard has had to get accustomed to, because as a driver at Ferrari, it was very easy to slide down from Austria down to Maranello for a day's testing, but to jump on a plane and go to Japan, different deal altogether.
And still looking at Nannini here in 3rd place, having withheld the challenge from Berger a couple of laps ago in the most sensational style. Senna, we were watching just earlier there, we almost forgot about him. He's 10.04 seconds ahead, and less than 4 laps, just going on to 3 laps to go now.
Well, that move by Nannini really did catch Berger unawares, and it seems to have taken the wind out of his sails, unless maybe in the course of that overtaking he got dirt on his tyres. One of the problems with these racing slick tyres is when they get hot and sticky, they're very fine when you're on the line, but if you have to go offline, and I think Berger really was forced offline when Nannini was trying to regain his third spot. If your tyres get clogged with the dust and the rubber that's off the line, then suddenly you've got a lot less grip, and it takes quite a long time for those tyres to clean up. That could account for Berger not being able to really come back strongly at Alessandro Nannini. And one thing is for sure, he had to go slightly wide into the entry of the first part of the Le Cumbe complex at the top of the circuit.
It may not be all over yet, though, because Berger seems to be closing in slightly again. It's only 1.036 of a second, and we have got 3 laps. They have got 3 laps to go. The leader got slightly less. And that Brabham is in a bad position there, John. You could see right on the racing line where if they care to run a little bit wide.
Yes, the car is parked over Nannini, and a major wobble. The back of the car stepped out violently, and now Berger, Nannini had to get right out of the throttle, lost the momentum. Berger snatched it. He must have thought, this is a gift from heaven. Watch again, look. A big moment. Now that is rear tyres, probably on the limit of their adhesion. Well, on the limit of their adhesion, obviously, but that's the penalty Nannini has had to pay, and that is the gift that Berger was looking for. He saw it, he accepted it. He's now in third place.
Well, my goodness, and what a heart stopper. What a place to have it happen to you. And of all places in the whole Grand Prix world, that's just the one place you really don't want to get a car light.
I think when that happened to Nannini, his foot came off the throttle so rapidly, his knee probably hit his chin. That was a very nasty moment. One place in the circuit, you don't want to get a car stepping out.
So it's Berger third, and Nannini, I would say, with a very trembly little knee at the moment after that huge moment at speeds of probably about 170 miles an hour. Really, that was an incredible piece of work to hold the car, because it really did get noticeably sideways one way and then the other. And of course the temptation in that point, who's this?
Well, I think we've got one of the Brabhams well blown up. We can't see which of the two. I think it's Modena's car. What they've done is actually, it's not just smoke. They've dumped a whole lot of fire extinguisher powder into the car. The car has got a powdering of that fire extinguisher dust. Marshals, of course, I think it's a good thing that they are trigger happy, because it's better to be that way than not. But they, any hint of fire at all, they'll dump an extinguisher all over the car. But of course, makes a bit of a mess around the back of it. The mechanics, it's a mechanic's nightmare to clean all that stuff off. But Ayrton Senna with 2 laps left. Pelly is coming up to lap.
And no Brabhams left in the Grand Prix. That was Modena. Earlier we saw David Brabham's car parked on the outside of La Source. So no Brabhams left. And less than 2 laps to go now for Ayrton Senna. The gap is down, but it really is all under control. It's down to 9.7 seconds between him and Prost. Berger now, of course, third, and Nannini fourth, and a rather frightened man, I would think.
Yes, well, as we said, that was a heart-stopping moment for any racing driver, and to get a car sideways at the top of Eau Rouge, coming through the Radion corners, is really scary. And Nannini had to lift off the throttle. He had no choice. He had to get the car back under control as quickly as possible, but Berger saw it and had the speed and was able to carry the speed through. He didn't have to lift off, and of course the speed differential at that point was probably as high as 20 miles an hour, and that's what made the overtaking for Berger ultimately so easy.
And we saw Senna just lapping 7th place man there, Capelli. So here he comes to complete his 43rd lap, going on to his last lap, and what looks like an absolutely superb performance. If he wins here at Spa, it'll be his 3rd victory in a row.
Yes,
and
indeed.
Of course his 2nd Grand Prix victory in a row. So definitely McLaren back on top at the moment, and Senna certainly proving wondrous things here at Spa. The gap, incidentally, between him and Prost now down to 7.7 seconds, so we certainly get a bit of excitement over the finish line, but I don't think, unless something dreadful happens, the positions are going to change. We don't see Prost. There he goes, just coming onto the straight now in the background.
All we're seeing is Ayrton Senna being absolutely, totally cautious. This is the last lap of the race. He's under no pressure whatsoever from Alain Prost in 2nd place. All he is doing is now making sure every braking point, every gear change, every input into the car is smooth and easy. He knows he's won the race. The only thing that's going to deny him is something unforeseen, mechanical failure. So really, all he has to do now is just gently ease his McLaren all the way around. The remainder, probably about just over 2 miles left of the lap before he takes the checkered flag, and I think this will be one very happy Brazilian boy, Ayrton Senna. Another victory for him, and really an important victory yet again, because his championship point situation is going to get the maximum score. Alan Prost will drop a further 3 points behind him, so that will put him, I think, 13 points ahead.
Yes, of course, his third Belgium Grand Prix in a row, as I said, but not his second victory in a row. That Terry Boutsen won at Hungary, but his second victory on the really fast circuits in a row. There he comes, up through Blanchimont for the last time, down into the bus stop chicane. No mistakes here. Gently over the curbs this time. Indeed, he's probably one of the more gentle drivers of them all, and he's coming up, and what a record. He's going to take his 25th Grand Prix win and his third Spa Grand Prix in a row. There's Prost coming through in second place, only 3.5 seconds behind the two main protagonists in the 1990 World Championship, having an epic battle here at Spa. In third place now, we've got a long wait for Gerhard Berger, who should be some 32 seconds behind. Here he comes, having withstood the undivided attention of Nannini throughout the race. Third Berger, Nannini will probably appear, and he really backed off there. Here he comes, backed off to roll way over 40 seconds, John.
Yes, indeed, Nannini's decided fourth place is the best he's going to get today, and really all he's going to do is just crawl across the line. He may have had a last-minute problem, but certainly, whether it was to do with that enormous moment he had at the top of the Eau Rouge, or whether it was something he just decided, I can't challenge Berger anymore, I've done my best, I've fought valiantly, and he certainly did fight valiantly. So Berger third, Nannini fourth, Piquet fifth, and Mauricio Gugelmin the third Brazilian in the top six today. That's quite an amazing feat, isn't it? 3 Brazilian drivers in the race and 3 of them in the top 6.
Well, 2 spectators that we met in Spa last night, John, will be over the moon about that. They'd come all the way from Sao Paulo. There's the 2 Lotuses finishing in order there. Warwick in 11th place and Donnelly in 12th place.
Yes, and there's only 0.3 of a second between those 2 guys, so little to pick and choose between the abilities of Martin Donnelly and Derek Warwick. But of course, really a very disappointing performance overall for Lotus. Really, they have got to do something fairly substantial in the future to get back to the pinnacle that they've enjoyed in the 60s and the 70s. So really rather sad indeed.
And an unofficial update on the World Championship. Senna pulling ahead with a 13-point lead over Prost. He's got a total of 63 points now. Prost 50. Berger still in third place with 33 points. Boutsen no points today, I'm afraid, 27 points total. Piquet once again scoring, getting 24. Nannini 16 and Patrese 15. Just to give you the full list of runners at the end of 44 laps. Senna, Prost, Berger, Nannini, Piquet, Gugelmin, Capelli, Aletti, Berger 9th, 10th Cafe, 11th Warwick, 12th Donnelly, 13th Alboreto, 14th Larini, 15th Martini, and 16th Griard. And John, what a race.
Well, it was a great race, and now the next race we've got to look forward to, of course, is the Italian Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time at Monza, and that's another circuit that will suit the power cars. And of course, Ayrton Senna must go there feeling absolutely buoyant, because that's a circuit where Honda power really ought to be dominant. And of course, he will want to have a victory there. He was denied last year a victory when his engine blew up so dramatically in the Parabolica. And really, Senna must now feel that the 1990 championship is in his grasp. Alan Prost, of course, will be doing everything he knows to do to regain that position. He's now 13 points behind Senna. It's not insurmountable, because the races after Monza, Portugal and Jerez in Spain, are 2 races I feel will probably suit Ferrari more than McLaren. So the battle for the 1990 championship is still absolutely wide open, and just one failure to finish for Senna can totally change the outlook of the championship.
And it's not often we get an opportunity to witness live a Grand Prix that only gets going on its third start, has an incident like the Nannini-Berger passing incident, and indeed again an incident like Nannini catching that car at the top of Eau Rouge. That was really quite incredible, and one that I'll remember for a long time. So Whereas the crowds still swelter in the sunshine here at Spa. The rain thankfully never came that was threatening this afternoon. We will remember the Spa Grand Prix for a long time. Hope you certainly have enjoyed it here on Eurosport. And Senna leaves Spa with, again, a few more points.